Yes, it is me. Joined by my beautiful other half, Edwina. We thought that she would join in the festivities tonight that we have planned as a joint episode between myself and the Cigar Professor. And I am one of the Cigar Professors. And I'll introduce you to Damo and to Omar. And this has kind of come out of the Cigar Professor. So before I know everyone wants to know what happened, blah, 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 I'm sure we'll get to that. I'll have a chat about it with the boys. But let me tell you what's going on in terms of this episode, because it's going to be a bit different to any of the other ones that you've seen. And that was on purpose, not knowing what was going to happen today and all the drama that we've just had. So every Friday night, myself, Damien, and Omar, you'll meet both of them in just a minute. We do this thing called the Cigar Professor. We are a cigar subscription and education service. So people subscribe to us, they get their cigars, and then every Friday night, we all sit down online and we smoke at the same time. We'll talk about tasting notes and drink pairing notes and construction and smoking tips and all that stuff. It's an educational service. And we've been getting repeated requests from our subscribers there to do an episode where we didn't just have to be talking about the cigars the whole time, and we could just kind of cut loose and talk about anything. We have a no politics rule at the Cigar Professor, and they wanted, or you wanted, I should say, an episode where we could talk about anything, including politics. So that's what tonight was supposed to be. And I thought, you know what, why not introduce my Cigar Professor world to my Topher world and vice versa? That's what tonight was meant to be all about. And then shit got a little cray.
There was a knock at the door.
Look, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that. But now that you understand why we're here, and yes, I will answer all the questions in due course. It was a very, very painless experience. But first, let me introduce you to Cigar Professor Damien. How are you?
I'm doing fine tonight, thank you.
Admit it, you were hoping I never came out, weren't you? You were like,
it was panic stations, I can tell you. No, I was in sheer trepidation. My wife had never seen me look as petrified as I was walking out the door to come to work.
So for those that don't know, Damien and I, we are the partners in the Cigar Professor. And so, yes, if I'd been thrown off the end of a pier with concrete boots, then Damien would have inherited the empire of the Cigar Professor, the tiny little business that it is. But I'm sorry to disappoint you, Damo. I'm back.
I'd rather have you back than the other half of the business.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. Omar, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good to see you here.
Look, I see you put a lot of effort in tonight. I really appreciate that. You're wearing your good hoodie, and I see you've done your hair.
Perfect. I had to shampoo, the whole lot. So
yeah, no, it's a big routine for you.
Blow dry.
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Well, good stuff, guys. So this is going to be quite a lot about smoking, because the three of us, we are the Cigar Professors, and we enjoy our cigars. So, guys, I'm going to kick off. I thought, you know what?
I'm not a Cigar Professor at all.
Fine.
And so far, I've just been referred to as wife, which
I did
I'm
call
not
you. I did introduce you as Edwina.
Yeah.
Well, look.
3 cigars.
Ooh, lucky you.
Okay, so hang on. How long was I out of the house for? Was it like 2.5 hours, 3 hours? That's all it took, and you're just raiding my humidor.
Well,
and just
I
look, she phoned for advice, and I was more than willing to help.
So you betrayed me. I see.
You went out the door, and I
went out the door. Yeah, okay.
You went out the door, taken out the door, swiftly carried away, and I thought, obviously, I have people to call. I called all of those people. And then I thought, oh, look at that. There's a Cigar Professor on tonight. I better quickly call Damo. I wonder if I could just fudge my way through it and jump in and pretend that I'm Topher.
No one would notice the difference. No one would notice the difference.
Well, actually, I was going to make a comment. Have you done something with your hair? You're looking mighty fine tonight, Topher.
I am. Looking great.
The new color.
And I hope you're appreciating the lipstick that I'm wearing too.
Yeah, that's right.
But I have then picked up 3 because I didn't know what I would like. And since having Winston, I don't often finish a cigar myself. So Damo helped me pick a few to be able to smoke tonight. I have the Gurkha Chairman Select 13-year-old, a lovely mild one that Damo said would be quite good. Then I found some other funny ones that I thought could be great as well. This one's called...
You're hiding behind this. You need to... I told you to sit on this side. There was a reason why I said that, but...
This one...
Nasty Fritters.
Nasty Fritters. Hilarious name, and I thought very appropriate for today.
Yes, definitely.
And then I have what is that? Perdomo
10th anniversary champagne in a not a perfecto.
That is an exceptional one. That was definitely a crowd favorite when we had it a while back.
That's a good stick.
Yeah, and this was, I think, the other one that you said, Damo, would be excellent.
All right, so we've got people asking in the comments here, asking you to introduce yourself. So obviously I haven't done that properly. So please, babe, who are you?
So I am
You've got to sit on this side.
The long-suffering partner? I'm not sure. No.
You haven't been suffering for all that long. We've only been married for
8 years. 8 years. So I am Topher's wife, and my name is Edwina, and I don't carry the field name because I like my own, and I like to keep everything very separate. I think it works well.
For reasons of days like today.
Except for the cigars.
Apparently that's no longer separate. I liked it better when that was separate. Okay. So tonight, I know a lot of people want to hear what happened today, so we'll get to that. But I thought today was a bit of a momentous occasion, so I would reach for the very, very top shelf of my humidor. This is the EP Carrillo Pledge prequel. It is the reigning champion of the best cigar in the world and won Cigar of the Year in 2020. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go straight for the very, very top. Guys, what do you got?
Well, tonight I have a Room 101, and this particular blend is called Hit and Run. And tonight this is an appraisal for its potential for our business down the track, really.
Yep,
so
for an inclusion into
an opportunity.
Do you know how to do that?
Which one am I going to start with, though? That's the question.
Start with. You're planning on having more than one. Oh, this is going to get good, guys.
I was telling her the best bit is like the first third to half. So if she feels like a full cigar, she could just do like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Are you trying to give me a heart attack? Are you trying to kill me, Damo? Seriously, you did not need encouragement. Oh, goodness me. All right, I would strongly recommend that one.
That one?
I think that one's going to be too smoky for you.
Too smoky? Okay.
How about you, Omar? Are you joining the same as me tonight?
So you're both doing that as an appraisal. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
all right. I think I'm going to start with the other one because this one's split. See there? That one's split.
Yeah, I think that one got a bit too humid at some point in time, and it just overstressed the wrapper.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll smoke okay when I get to it. But I reckon that's the right choice for you, babe, anyway.
We'll see how we go.
All right. So there's a lot of questions pouring in. Some people not quite understanding what this even is, and I don't blame you because it is a first. It's the first time we've ever done anything like this. So if you've just tuned in, guys, meet my beautiful wife, Edwina.
Hi.
My business partner, Damo.
g'day.
And some random dude that we found on the side of the road and took pity on, Omar.
I believe he's Cell Block D.
He's Cell Block D.
Just met him recently.
And Damo, Omar, and myself are the Cigar Professors. That's a business that we run. And we usually do this on a Friday night. And we have a no politics rule. We never talk about politics. And tonight was a special episode that we set aside by request of the subscribers to do an episode of the Cigar Professor and talk about politics. And I made the decision, you know what, why not introduce the world of the Cigar Professor to the world of Topher and vice versa? And so I decided to jointly stream it across Topher and the Cigar Professor, having no clue what was going to happen at whatever time that was this afternoon, and knock on the door, and everything changed rather quickly. So here we are. So guys, tonight is not going to be one of my brain dump downloads. I need to de-stress and decompress from what happened to me today. These are 2 of my favorite people to smoke cigars with, and this is my favorite person in the whole wide world. So I am going to enjoy some kickback time. If that doesn't work for you tonight, then please go do something else that you want to do with a bit of relaxation, a bit of chill, a bit of friends talking amongst themselves. And yes, we will tell the story and what happened. Then stick around. It should be a lot of fun. I do want to say the outpouring of love has been amazing. I'm so grateful. People from literally all over the country blowing up my phone, blowing up Edwina's phone, sending messages to the page. It's just been phenomenal. And I cannot begin to tell you how much that means to know that was happening while I was in there.
Someone was going to bring you cake in jail. I love cake.
Someone earlier said they were going to smuggle some, yeah, there we go, cake in jail.
Bring cake.
They were going to smuggle some
nice. I like jail cake. Always a surprise.
I should have stayed in prison because apparently someone was going to smuggle me some Cubans. So anyway.
You're home too early.
Yeah, I got home too soon.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been offering financial help with my legal defense, etc., and I'm very, very grateful for that. But my priority right now is the documentary. And so my court date has been set for the 19th of January. I have 4 charges against me, 2 for incitement and 2 for breaching the chief health officer's orders. I have some bail conditions, but they're very, very light. They're not going to stop me from doing the documentary. They're not going to stop me from being able to continue doing things like this. So my priority is to get that documentary done and finished before that court date. Now, the intention was always to have it done before Christmas, so that shouldn't be a problem. 19th of January leaves me with the better part of a month to spare in between those dates. So instead of helping out with legal fees, because I'll cross that hurdle when I get there, I would be very, very grateful. If you do want to help out, please do that by donating to the documentary. So this is the poster for it, which has been done by my team. Battleground Melbourne is the name. And it's the fall of the world's most livable city as seen through the eyes of the people that risked everything to save it. And I now join an elite club of people that have been arrested for my activities in trying to save this city from itself or to save the city from Daniel Andrews. So we need to get this story told. We need to get this documentary made. It's coming together really well. I am already working on it. I'd already made the decision that I was going to go ahead, even though the money hadn't been raised yet. The minimum budget is $65,000. I can't make it for less than that. And right now the fundraiser is actually already halfway there, which is brilliant. If I was quoting on this job commercially to actually do it properly, it's around about a $210,000 to $230,000 job. And so that's the budget that I would love to have, because at that point I can get a small army of professionals together, pay them properly, work them hard, and get this done to a really high standard in a really short space of time. So 65 grand is the first goal. Let's get there. And then let's see if we can get up even further. And that will just increase my capacity to do a better job and start to give me marketing budget to be able to promote it afterwards. So I'm just going to type in the link to go to.
Oh, I was about to just read it out to you.
Yeah, no. So www.givesendgo.com/battleground Melbourne. Givesendgo.com, battleground Melbourne. Yep. Okay, so that should pop up now. Wherever you're watching, should pop up in the comments on Facebook, on YouTube, etc. And if you do want to help out, that's the way to do it, please. Make that happen and make that amazing and spectacular. And then I'll worry about my court case when we get there. This documentary is far more important than the outcome of my court case. So anyway, plug done, plug over. Guys, how are you enjoying the sticks?
The first round of plug.
Sure. Okay, I'll do it again later. Fine.
Yeah, good. Not bad. Not bad.
So we've had a Room 101.
Yeah, look, it's we've had a Room 101 in one of our other packs.
In pack one.
Different, totally different construction and design to the one we had earlier. So it's a lot more mild, a lot more nutty in its flavors. So so far so good. But I've learnt over the course of time, really, to be fair to a cigar, you never judge it in the first 5 to 10 minutes. You've got to get through that 5 to 10 minute period to make a fair judgment of it. So for viewers who have never smoked a cigar, and I'm sure you've got a lot of viewers who probably go, put cigar smoking in the same category as cigarette smoking. And to be quite honest, I was one of those people a few years ago. Yeah. And look, I'm happy to share my journey with cigars. 2016, I think it was, or 2015. I think it was 16. I was in America on a business trip, meeting with some business people that we had dealings with. And one of the owners of a company was a cigar smoker. And he said, "Oh, look, excuse me, I'm going outside to have a cigar with my supplier and one of my contract manufacturers. If you would like to meet them," and mind you, I'm only a customer of his. I'm not part of his business operations. And I was over there negotiating deals. And so here is my supplier willing to introduce me to his contract manufacturer and his raw material supplier. But the condition was that if I came down, I had to partake in a cigar with them. And, well, I sat there deliberating for quite a long time because I'm like, I don't smoke. I don't believe in smoking. Smoking's awful. Smoking's bad. Smoking causes cancer. All of this sort of stuff. But the business opportunity got the better of me, being a person who's always striving to be an entrepreneur of some description. And I thought, well, surely once wouldn't be bad, just to be part of it and get it over and done with and whatever. And he was so gracious. He really sat down and walked me through it. He said, now, have you ever smoked a cigar before? I said, no. And he took me through the whole thing of how you cut a cigar, how you light a cigar. And he said, whatever you do not inhale a cigar. He said, it's like wine tasting. You get a bit in the mouth, you swish it around, and you spit it back out.
There is a huge amount of
breathe
ritual.
It under any circumstances, or you'll never forgive me. So
there's a huge amount of ritual involved in cigar smoking. And if you just pick one up and you try and smoke it, you're going to have a bad experience. You really do need someone who understands the ritual to actually kind of introduce you to it, so you don't do things like inhaling the smoke.
Exactly. And he was even, he was very, very attentive to me. He was like, okay, well, whoa, slow down. You're smoking it too fast. And then it went out a few times. He says, okay, well, this is how you relight it. You scrape the ash off, and otherwise, if you char the ash, it's going to taste bad and bitter. And he really educated me into it. And I had that one cigar, didn't have any more. And then about 2 years later, I went back into America for another business trip, and he said, I'll pick you up from the airport. So I put the luggage in the boot of his vehicle. He's driving. I jump in the front passenger seat. I put my seatbelt on. I turn to look at him, and he shoves a lit cigar in my mouth. No asking me whether I wanted it. It was like, you had one with me before, so you're going to have another one with me now. And then that was my second cigar. And on that second trip, I ended up having about 3 or 4 cigars with him over the course of a week. Yeah. And that was when my eyes started to light up. It's like, guys that are into their wine or into their whiskey or into their coffee, and you start to discover all these different flavors that, when you first start out, whiskey's whiskey or wine's wine. It's all sort of the same context.
So most people here don't know you. So you're not just some random when it comes to flavor. You are actually the coffee professor, which is how we got the name for our business, the Cigar Professor.
That's right.
So flavor is literally your business.
Yeah, so one of the businesses that I'm involved in was helping cafes standardize the flavor of coffee across multiple sites. So one of the problems with cafes is they'll want to roll out like multiple locations running the same brand. They'll have the same machine, the same equipment, the same coffee beans. They'll do the same training with the staff, but they end up with different results at each location. And each one of those things has an effect, but one of the things that many people had overlooked for many, many years was that the water quality, even around the same city, will change vastly based upon which reservoir it's coming from, whether it's copper pipes, iron pipes, concrete pipes, and all these different things. And so we started developing water filtration technologies that we could actually standardize the water, so you could actually throw your complete setup into one location, and it didn't matter what quality of water was coming in. The output on our systems gave the exact same mineral content, pH, total dissolved solids, the whole lot on the output, so that cafes could get more consistency across their chain. Sort of, how like with McDonald's, you go to every McDonald's store and you know what a cheeseburger is going to taste like. It tastes the same in every store. And cafes have been struggling with that for many years. And so we sort of were riding the third wave of the coffee industry, with helping cafes, tune that in. And I developed my palate quite quickly, because in the coffee industry, there's some really passionate guys, and you guys being in Melbourne would just know how passionate your baristas can be about coffee. I discovered at that point, getting involved in the industry, that I could actually taste a lot of these flavors that the people were talking about. You go to a fancy restaurant, the sommelier comes out and talks about the wines and talks about all these, hints of oak, and, there's a peaty, woody ashiness on the finish, and there's a tart, crisp green apple on the open, and all that sort of stuff. I actually discovered that I could pick up these type of things in coffee. And the more I started talking with my customers and being with them, the more I learned. And what it actually did was they respected me more, because I'd have a cup of their coffee. That's, I turn up to do work, and obviously they've got to wait for a lull in the traffic of the customers before I can get in and start fiddling with equipment and machines.
Got to pause you I've got to pause you. We have to answer Josh's question.
That's a great question.
Josh says, give me the top 3 cigar recommendations for a beginner with a wood fire craving. All right, it's 3 of us. He's asking for 3 recommendations.
Hold on. I might have
so can I get some clarification? Is the wood fire craving he likes wood-fired smoke smell taste? Is that what we're referring to?
All right, Josh, we need more information.
So if we can just clarify that one.
The smell of wood fires, maybe?
If he definitely likes that, I've definitely got a recommendation.
Okay. Mine wouldn't change regardless, so I'll jump in. Ave Maria Immaculata, I think, is one of the great blends for beginners. Ave Maria Immaculata. I don't have one with me. I've got one in the humidor. Absolutely brilliant cigar, nice and mild. Doesn't have a strong nicotine hit, but there's enough going on and there's enough flavor there, although it's mild, that you can still explore and try and see what you can actually taste.
I was actually going to say somebody's actually asked where they go to buy some cigars. Oh, there we go.
Ah, there you go.
To where you buy cigars in Melbourne. If you don't know much about cigars or you're starting out, I would say jump onto the Cigar Professor Facebook page and sign up for, I think it was pack 1, if they're still available. I don't know, Damo.
So there's laws around advertising tobacco.
I can't say that.
So all we're going to say is we have a Facebook page. It's Cigar Professor on Facebook. Go there, send us a message. We'll help you out.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all we can say. So
we can also, if you're looking for somewhere local, we have another guy that joins us on the show by the name of Whiskey Pete. He's a whiskey expert, but he is also the only non-Cuban person in the world who is actually a certified, qualified Cuban cigar roller. He had some friends who were in the Russian embassy. He used his contacts in the Russian embassy, I think it was, to get into a course in Cuba. And he spent many, many months learning how to roll cigars over there. He's got a bit of a network of people around the country too. So if you do need to, if you do need to find somewhere that you need to go to in person, we can. If you just reach out to us through that contact, we can get that information for you as well.
And someone's asked if you aren't on Facebook, send an email to admin@cigarprofessor.com.au.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
it's your email address.
Yeah, I know. And I don't have it open. I'm not going to open it up now. Try.com.
I'll see if I can find it during the show, and we'll
we'll put it up. So admin@cigarprofessor.com, maybe .au. I honestly don't remember.
I think the inmate in Cell Block D has something to say.
Omar, what's going on?
Enjoying the cigar.
You're talking too much. No, move on. Next.
So I don't want to engage too much before I sort something out with Damo. Damo, what do you want me to do with the accountant?
Just hold that thought for a second. admin@cigarprofessor.com.au.
There you go.
Damo, what am I doing with the accountant?
The accountant?
Yeah. So I've got a call from the accountant because after you went to the jail, he wanted me to give me the part of the business. So I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just,
Well, we had some concerns about the splitting of the business on the basis that the number of cigars that you smoked from the business is greater than the residual equity to transfer to you. So
pot calling the kettle black. Come on. Listen, I was gone for 3 hours. She's raiding my humidor. You're raiding my business. That's me.
Dude, I just don't want to meet in the sandwich. I just had to call the accountant. Leave me out of that.
You, Omar. It was your idea. I'm sure it was your idea.
Anyway, so accountant. So I'm not doing anything with the accountant anymore. Just so you know.
So we do have a good answer from Josh regarding the smoke. He likes the smoky sort of flavors in slow cooked meats, etc. So that's what he's talking about. So Damo, fire away. Okay. What do you recommend for a beginner?
Cedar notes. If you look at what was that Cuban one we had in the green tube? Was that the Bolivar?
in the green tube. That was the Bolivar. That was magnificent. That was
a great one. So if you're looking for a Cuban cigar, that would be my first recommendation. Definitely the Ave Maria that Topher recommended. It's got a lot of those oaky and nutty flavors in it, and a bit of cedar. That would definitely be another definite recommendation. I tell you what did have some interesting notes too was the Oliva Milanio Oliva Series V Milanio that we had the other week.
Yeah.
But what I recommend is if you go to either the YouTube or Facebook page, search for the Cigar Professor channel, and actually have a look. We've got all of our previous shows there, and the shows are listed by which cigar we're smoking. You can actually sit there and listen to a running commentary from the very light up to the very finish, and all the tastes and flavors and experiences that we're getting from start to finish. And if that sounds like your cigar, then just reach out to us and we can make things happen.
Yeah. Camp Creek Hill has chimed in and said, here comes the wanker speak. Absolutely. The Friday night is when I can just release the inner wanker. Wank speak and dick jokes. That is basically the staple of Friday night Cigar Professor entertainment. So if you're into that sort of thing, you can join us on the Cigar Professor.
Well, you've got to, like, technically I'm an honorary Melburnian. I don't know whether I still want to hold that title after the last 18 months, but, you know, I've become very fluent in wank speak, especially with all the high-end cafes that I'm dealing with. The only problem is I can't grow a man bun because I'm too bald up top. So if I could, I would, you know, just to be part of the crowd, you know. But
how do I end up in business with two follically challenged individuals? How did that happen?
You got enough hair for the both of us.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, I could probably populate. Yeah. And
I can grow
mine just migrated south for the winter.
Yeah.
I saw a question come up earlier from Lucy, because I think maybe Lucy and Sal are, I don't know where it's gone.
What was it?
It was about the humidor.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Where do you source decent cedar humidors?
Yeah.
Do you need a cedar humidor? I use an acrylic humidor with cedar inserts.
So go grab it and then you can show them.
All right. Damo, you talk. I'll grab my humidor.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lucy, a lot of people starting out generally will do what Topher has done and use Tupperware, or they're actually professionally built acrylic humidors that are cheaper than the cedar ones. It's a very particular type of cedar. It's known as Spanish cedar, and I could be mistaken in this, but I don't believe it is actually a true cedar by its proper biological family group, whatever that stuff is. I'm not a biologist, but a cedar humidor definitely does, I believe, make for better cigar storage long term. If you're looking to age cigars over a period of time, which is something that I'm passionate about. Like people love aging wine, I love aging cigars. The one that Topher's got there has got a cedar tray, and that's probably the best compromise. So it's an acrylic humidor with a cedar tray. It's much cheaper than buying a cedar humidor. But look, if you want to reach out to us, we actually have a range of small cedar humidors. We do some of the acrylic ones as well. And we can hook you up with what we've got available and prices on that. But look, a lot of the guys that start out with us, they just go to Woolworths and buy a Tupperware container. And then a lot of cigars, if you buy a box or a partial box and manage to get the box with it, we'll actually have sheets of cedar that they'll pack the cigar in. So they'll have a cardboard box or some sort of cheap plywood box, but put like a liner of cedar in it. And you can get some of those out and just put them in your normal...
So Lucy, I know, loves flavors, and she's talking about also using them for vanilla pods. I'm guessing to perhaps flavor them. I know she does a lot of stuff with spices and flavors.
Infusing cigars.
Infusing vanilla pods
into the cigars, I assume.
Into the cedar flavor, vanilla pods.
The cedar flavor into the vanilla, that would actually be quite interesting.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would actually make a very interesting adult decadent ice cream. I think if you actually did some sort of spirit ice cream with the cedar infused vanilla, that could be quite a winning combination. It's something I would have expected to have at Fat Duck if it still existed.
Steve, Cigar Professor page on Facebook is the best way to get in touch with us.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people keep on asking about, why are you here? How did you get out so fast?
You have asked me that question every day since we got married.
That's true.
You wake up in the morning and you look at me and you're like, why are you here?
How are you somewhere else? And now part of it could just be we have an excellent lawyer that just knows her craft very well.
Look, I would love to tell you some big dramatic story, but the reality is the two.
So it didn't involve microfilm and photos and envelopes and
no cavity searches either. I was quite disappointed. It was very, very straightforward. The two officers that came, one of them has already interacted with me in the past. He was one of the ones that has come to the door previously. And they knew very well that I'm not the sort of person who's going to cause trouble. So instead of sending 4 officers and a divvy van and all that sort of stuff, they just came out in a normal car and a normal police car, just the two of them. And he asked me to step out of the doorway so that Winston and Chloe didn't sort of have to see what was going on. He just said, look, we're here to arrest you. We know that you're not going to cause any trouble. So go inside, do what you got to do, and then come back out and come with us. So I went inside, grabbed my T-shirt, which I forgot to put back on. I should put it back on. That says, good people break bad laws. If they're going to take me down to the police station, I wanted to be at least wearing that T-shirt. So I put that on, and we drove into Dandenong, which is about a half hour from here, chatting the whole way. And, obviously I'm being careful what I'm saying and what questions I'm answering, but also building rapport. And, those of you that...
Being a nice person.
Yeah, well, those of you that follow my work, you know that I'm not here to be an asshole. I'm not here to create conflict where there doesn't need to be any. And I wanted to get to know these two officers. And, at some point, all this is going to be over and Daniel Andrews is going to be out on his ear and we're going to have to try and rebuild and mend all the damage that's been done. And I think some rapport between police and people like myself is only going to be a good thing. It's not going to be a bad thing. So I chatted with them all the way in. They took me in. I was quite excited, actually, because they said that they were going to take me in through the back entrance, like the secure entrance where they bring all the real offenders, just because that was the entrance that they were using. And I'd get to walk through where all the cells were. And I've never seen that before, right? I haven't been arrested before.
So the same as on TV?
Probably, but I don't know. I haven't seen it with my own eyes. Nothing on TV is real. So I was quite excited. And then we got there, and this is the absurdity of it. They had arrested somebody who had the symptoms of a cold, and they were obliged to treat it like he probably had COVID-19, and therefore we were sent through the front door, which is the one that's open to the public. Anyone can go into. So I never saw the inner workings of a police station at all, which I was a little bit cut about that, to be honest.
Oh, well. At least
next time.
Yeah, well, yeah. I did promise you before we got married that it'd happen one day.
It's taken 8 years, though.
It's taken 8 years. It's been a long time.
And, you didn't end up spending any time in a cell.
Sorry about that.
So does that even count?
Yeah, I'm still chalking that one up. I'm still saying mission accomplished.
Really? I'm sitting here
achievement unlocked.
Try harder.
You want me to do 12 years of hard labor, don't you?
Well, somebody's got.
Well, it's okay, babe. I'm already up to 8 years of hard labor. So there's only 4 to go. So.
Nice try.
So then they did the formal interview. Actually, it was they did the formal interview, and I just gave a no comment record of interview, no comment on anything. And then they put the bail conditions in front of me. And this was the real concern. If they were going to try and do to me what they tried to do to Monica, then I was going to make the same decision that Monica made, right?
Or even the other guy, the Free Geordie guy.
Oh, yeah, Jordan Shanks, yeah.
Whatever his name is, yeah. Because they've done some weird stuff there as well.
Yeah, so if they were going to try and use bail conditions to shut me down, shut down my page, shut down the documentary, stop me from being able to speak, use it as a gag, then we were going to have a problem, and I was going to be staying in indefinitely. And so that was my main apprehension. I really wasn't stressed about any part of the whole process. It's just a process. But I was apprehensive about what the bail conditions were going to be, because that was going to determine then how long I was going to be in for. As it turns out, the sergeant, who was the more senior of the two officers that I was dealing with, proved to not only be a nice, he was being professional, but he was also being lovely. He was being very nice. But he was also very reasonable. And so the bail conditions that they put in front of me were ones that I looked at and went, okay, I can live with that. And I'm happy enough. I'm not gonna get myself locked away and have a big dramatic whatever and be away from my kids and away from Edwina, etc., over arguing about what is already really fairly reasonable bail conditions. So we finished the interview. I read the bail conditions. I signed them. and then they drove me home again. And that was really it. Like it's about as.
Well, at least they drove you home and didn't put you on the other side of Melbourne.
Yeah, which was nice. They asked me, do you want to call your wife and she can pick you up, or do you want us to drive you home? And I said, look, we've got 2 young kids. If you can drive me home and save Eddie from having to pile him into the car and drive half an hour and drive half an hour home again, then that'd be good. And they did. It
would have been nice if they let you.
It sounds like, in all honesty, that Vic Pole needs more officers like that.
100%. 100%.
That they're the kind of officers that the community respects and is happy to be civil and communicate and dialogue with.
And look, my interactions with individual police members have almost always been very positive. I had one bad experience when I was a teenager with an officer who was just an absolute so-and-so. But overwhelmingly, my interactions with police have been, at a personal level, at an individual level, incredibly positive. My issue is that they're going along with stuff that many of them know isn't right. Many of them know that this stuff doesn't stand up in court, and yet they just continue to do their part and just say, "Oh, I'm just following orders. I don't have a choice." Blah blah blah. And I'll be doing a video on this whole we don't get to pick and choose which laws we follow nonsense at some point in the future. So I won't bore you with that. But to finish the story, the bail conditions are: I'm not allowed to move house unless I tell them. I have to follow the CHO directions. And I'm not allowed to reveal any identifying details about the officers that were involved in the arrest, which I wouldn't do anyway, but they're just trying to make sure I don't get up on here and say, well, this was their name and this is their badge number and blah, 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 which I would never have done to begin with.
Be pretty poor form.
Yeah, that's completely unnecessary. So yeah, I wish I could say it was more dramatic, but I actually owe a big thank you to Monica Schmidt, because they were going to try that on with someone. Right? They were going to try and slap someone with massive bail conditions. So if you don't know what happened with Monica, she got arrested and they basically tried to shut down her entire organization, deplatform her off the internet. Like, the bail conditions were absurd. And she stood her ground and she said, no, this isn't okay. And you'll have to, I'll go into prison and await a bail hearing in front of a judge. And she was in prison for 22 days. And in the end, the judge reduced the bail conditions down to a much more reasonable level, which she then signed and was released and became engaged the same day to Morgan Jonas. And so that's her story. If she hadn't done that, if she'd capitulated and just signed whatever they put in front of it, they might have tried the same stunt with me, right? But because she stood her ground and set that example for the police then would have looked at someone like me and looked at others and gone, you know what, maybe let's not try it on because we don't want the negative publicity. We don't want all that sort of stuff going on. So you're probably not watching, Monica, but just know I'm grateful for the stand that you took, because indirectly, but probably quite significantly, you just made my life a lot easier. So thank you.
And I know that Monica posted your live stream to her page. I also saw Rukshan, sorry.
Yep. It was on Rebel News as well.
I think the Aussie Cossack might have also as well.
Yeah.
It definitely, everybody who has been in the same network of standing up for the rights of Victorians and Australians were definitely, making sure that this was made known and got the appropriate coverage that it deserved.
Yeah, and I'm tremendously grateful. And in the grand scheme of things, it couldn't have gone better. And in a way, it takes a bit of a load off, because I no longer have to be worried that, that was a car door. Is that the police? I've been expecting this for a while, as anyone that follows my work knows. I've not been shy about saying, no, I'm going to stand up for human rights, even if the CHO directives are saying I'm not allowed to. That's the number one time when you should. I've been very public about that. And that's been what I've said all the way through. And I expected today to come. So it's almost nice in a way to be able to go, okay, it's happened. I've got a court date in January. Yeah, okay, I have to wear a mask and do a bunch of stuff that I've not been doing in order to deliberately set an example. Well, I don't want to be in breach of bail. That's a whole other world of hurt. So I'm going to have to do a bunch of sucky stuff that I don't want to do, but I will choose to do, get to that court date in January. And by then, my doco will already be out. And at that point, it's kind of like, I'm not that worried what comes out of these charges, to be honest.
I think the more important question is, will you get an Oscar from your doco?
Because Edwina is determined to go to the Oscars one day, and she literally married me because she was hoping that I might be the vehicle to help make that happen. Is that a fair description?
I like parties and I like wearing pretty dresses. So, it makes sense, really.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to be doing filmmaking and commentary, there still has to be a purpose to it, a bigger purpose. And that might just be going to an awards ceremony in a pretty dress.
Depending on the results of IBAC or the next election, there could be lots of parties that you'll get to wear pretty dresses at it soon anyway.
I know. Would that be exciting?
Yes. Okay, so people are asking what's the charge. There are 4 charges, 2 for incitement for things that I posted on my Facebook page, and 2 for breaching the Cho's orders. And that was in relation to protests where I live streamed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think also say, for those that do want to help with legal fees and all that kind of stuff, thank you very much. But instead, please, if you could just help to fund the documentary so that can get up off the ground. I mean, it's already starting to...
We're halfway to the minimum goal, which is fantastic. I launched the fundraiser a week ago. It was on Wednesday last week. We're halfway to the minimum goal.
Yeah.
So let me just put the link in if anyone wants to. Please don't donate if you're struggling, right? Look after yourself, look after your family. But if you are in a position where you can help to make this happen, that would be amazing. All right, I've just dropped the link in there again.
Have you asked Dan Andrews if he'd like to appear on your documentary?
Yeah, look, I asked him if he'd be willing to just chuck in maybe, I don't know, 10 grand or something, which compared to what he's rumored to have given John Setka, I'm not saying that happened, but rumored to have given John Setka, that's a drop in the bucket. So, you know, he can easily afford that. But yeah, look, I haven't had a reply yet. And to be honest, I'm not holding my breath.
Okay.
Yes. Now, this is a great point here that someone's made. Craig, Cell Block D, can you keep quiet, please? Can you just pipe down? This is too much, mate.
Dude, there's some really interesting conversation going on. So they say it's better not to contribute anything if you can't do anything good to it. So you're telling important story information that needs to be relayed. So there's no point of interrupting like Damo and his story about his freaking coffee and what the fuck he did in Melbourne. Who gives a fuck? Like, who really gives a fuck? So, yeah, please continue.
Says the man who rings me up and asks me to come up to his work so I can actually do a coffee cupping for him because he wants to have good coffee.
Oh, wow. So are we supposed to laugh about this or?
Omar, just you're familiar with the expression "don't bite the hand that feeds you." Can I just suggest don't upset the bloke who supplies you with cigars? Maybe just think about the implications.
Yeah.
Well, actually, on a truthful note, Omar will confirm this. Quite a few years ago, Omar had a nice little organic cafe. Everything was organic, everything was handmade, everything was made with love. And the biggest problem was that it seems to be in the industry, you can have really good coffee or you can have organic coffee, but you can't seem to have good organic coffee. Like it's sort of like you compromise on a really beautiful coffee that leaves you wanting a second and third cup for the sake of having an organic certification on it. And with his supplier and roaster, I worked with them extensively trying to come up with a blend for him. And we actually came up with a absolute killer blend. It was you would not have known it was organic coffee. But unfortunately, the supply of that particular bean dried up, and they had to change the blend. And it was still good, but that first blend we came up with, that was memorable. That was a life memorable experience.
I think for a blend, it was gorgeous. And Damo, obviously, you played a very important role in that, and we were able to pull out some good coffees.
Mate, the number of bloody coffees I had to drink. Oh my goodness. The coffee roasters were, I guess, getting a little bit frustrated with how pedantic I was becoming with trying to develop the blend. So I get a knock on the door, and it was one of their staff, and he goes, "Here you go." I said, "What's this?" And he says, "I don't know. The boss just told me to drop it off." I rang the boss of the company, and it was like 12 kilos of all sorts of coffees, and I had to bloody taste them. Not only taste them, try and blend them to come up with the winning blend to then go back to so they could go into production. So I sort of roughed it out for them, and then they fine tweaked it in the final production stage.
Cam, I hope
that's a great one. That's a dad joke.
That is such a dad joke, Cam.
Oh, I
you
love
better
it.
be a dad.
I love it.
That's your
I'm
joke-
going to have to borrow that one. That's almost as good as the one I did on my daughter yesterday.
What's that?
I said to her, "What do you call a fake noodle?"
Pasta?
An impasta.
Oh.
She just, that's what she did to me. Except she rolled her eyes at the same time.
That's when you know it's a good dad joke, though. That's the reaction.
Yeah,
you need to get.
exactly.
Paul's asking where we can watch the doco. It's going to be on all the platforms. It's going to be released for free. So it'll be on YouTube, it'll be on Rumble, it'll be on Facebook, it'll be on all of them. And if we get deplatformed off a few, so be it. It's still going to be very widely available.
Again, it's this one, if you're wondering. Got it? Got the link? Great.
Got it, good.
Actually,
where is the link?
I reckon that there needs to be a bit more Photoshop on that. You know, the red eye that the Terminator has?
Yeah, that could be fun.
Maybe even a little bit of the robotic skull being shown as well, perhaps. I don't know.
I will. I'll discuss it with the team. We'll take it under advisement, Damo. Don't call us. We'll call you.
So, Omar, how is your cigar going?
Oh, thanks for asking. Well, seems to be
You're
all
welcome.
about the coffee crap that we were talking about.
Coffee's
Look,
good,
it's
but we are smoking cigars. So
Yeah, we are. Look, it's a good cigar. I would say it's a good cigar. It's very vegetative and earthy and nutty. It's not very sweet,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it's more on the profile of vegetative, green, little bit of cedar, but it's nice.
which
it's very
one are you
pleasant.
smoking again?
It's
Room
the
101.
Room 101 is the brand or the overall brand of the company, and their
Yeah.
particular blend within their range of cigars is called Hit and Run.
Nice.
So
I-
I definitely agree with what Omar's saying. For me personally, I'm actually finding this quite a dry flavored cigar. It's leaving me quite parched. So I'm noticing I'm going for my cup of tea a fair bit on this cigar compared to some other ones. But speaking of cigars, Edwina, how are you finding the one that you've got there?
It's quite good actually. Yeah, it's a mild flavoring. So I was having the Perdomo
Champagne 10th anniversary
10th anniversary
in Connecticut.
all of that. And it's quite good. My ash hasn't dropped off.
Well
yet.
done.
Oh, wow.
You beat me.
Now you're just
You've
showing
won
off.
the ash bomb. It looks like Omar's dropped his.
I've dropped mine.
There you go.
So,
We have an Ash Queen. This is
Yeah.
the first ever Cigar Professor Ash Queen.
Well, look,
I'm
I
just
know
gonna
it was
say,
only
if you want
last
it done
week.
right, just get a woman to do it because she'll do it right.
No comment.
Yeah.
It was only last week that we had some of our Friday night viewers asking us when we were going to get a lady on the show to join us to break the testosterone of us three
To break the monotony.
swapping
Yep.
dirty jokes and talking the way we normally talk. So
enough.
hopefully our
Yeah.
regular viewers are quite appreciative of it. They're probably going to request that you come on more Friday night shows now, though. So you do
Probably.
have now set a precedent that you might have to live up to.
I'm probably going to get replaced out of this.
Well, look,
No.
you did
don't know
always
what-
say you had a face for radio, so
True.
And let's just put it this way. Next time, if Topher, it's weird calling you that, but if Topher does stay in prison for longer, then I'm happy to jump in, happy to take over.
and if that happens, I'll arrange a Uber Eats or Deliveroo of some beverages for you so that you're well catered to go with the cigar that we do that week.
Is that why we
Well-
keep doing this? Oh,
Hmm.
I get it.
Omar,
I've got no problems with that because I don't know what the hell the testosterone conversation was about. Damo is full of estrogen, and Topher is not much saying. So I think that's okay. But you coming in, Eddie, it would be fine. It'd be estrogen, and testosterone. That's fine. We can work with that.
guys, I've got to draw your attention to this comment that I've had up on the screen for a couple of minutes now. We were talking about the poster, adding the laser eye, bit of Terminator. We can call him the Derminator.
Does that fit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like
I
it
reckon.
fits.
Yeah.
The Terminator, the Vaccinator.
The vaccinated, yeah, okay. Yeah. We've got a great question from Daniel Morris here. 2 questions. Which cigar has the best foot smoke? I need a new car freshener. You've got good tasting car fresheners. Also, what is the best low budget everyday cigar? Need a good cheap stick.
I'm going to ask a question on top of that question. What is a foot smoke? Best foot smoke?
It's the smoke that comes off the actual cigar as you're smoking it. Which one smells best?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, for our viewers that don't know much about cigars, a lot of cigars, the foot smoke will actually smell substantially different to the smoke that you actually taste.
To the flavor.
And some cigars will have an acrid foot smoke that's quite sharp and abrupt when you sort of get a whiff of it. And then other cigars will actually have a very, very pleasant, almost incense-like foot smoke. I'm just trying to think. Well, actually, the Oliva V Lancero was one of the ones that we definitely enjoyed the foot smoke from. I noticed in the cigars that you chose for tonight, that little pyramid-shaped one, the Nasty Fritters, it has an interesting smell smoke as well. The smoke coming from that one, from memory, is almost the smell. If you can imagine going through the bush or the forest and you've got a pile of leaves burning and smouldering, that sort of almost sweet, damp, leafy, mulchy smoke smell.
Yeah.
That particular cigar produces that sort of smell, which I find quite pleasant. So
this is the Oliva V Lancero. I'll put it on your blonde hair, babe, so people can sort of see it. That's really lovely, both in flavor and in foot smoke. But it's not an easy cigar to smoke. Being so long and so narrow in the gauge, you've got to have a fairly good smoking technique in order to be able to actually get the best out of this one. The one that I would recommend for a daily would actually be probably this one here, which is much smaller, hence much more affordable as a daily. It's actually the same blend as what Edwina is smoking in a much smaller size, or a smaller Vitola is the name that they give to different shapes and sizes. And that is one that you could enjoy every day. It's quite mild. You could have that with a coffee in the morning, or you could have that after dinner, and it won't break the bank. So that's probably where I would go with that.
Okay, but hold on.
I'm glad you mentioned that one, because that was definitely what I would have recommended as well.
Yeah.
Okay, but none of you have discussed the cost, and Daniel also wants to know about the cost of these.
Oh, does he?
Yes.
So the most appalling thing with tobacco in Australia is the amount of tax that we pay on it. And it's also one of the taxes in Australia that they like to put a tax on top of a tax. So when tobacco is imported into Australia, they add tobacco tax onto the value of the cigar based on weight. At present, it works out to be about $1,700 a kilo, or $1.70 something a gram that they charge tobacco tax. And then they'll often charge the broker's customs duties on top of that, based on that value, and they'll add GST on top of all of that when it's added in. So you're basically paying a tax on a tax on a tax. So most cigars, cigarettes, tobacco in Australia, on average, when you look at the retail price, approximately 70% of the value of that cigar is tax.
So this is a huge cigar. You can't really tell on camera, but it's absolutely massive. The cost for us to land this in Australia exceeds $50, and overwhelmingly that's tax.
That's ridiculous.
Huge amount of tax just in a single stick.
Wasn't there? The vet guy that was the politician person at the federal level, I think in New South Wales.
David Leyonhjelm?
Yes.
Maybe that was his name.
That's him.
And didn't he give a speech in Parliament saying thank you for smoking?
Yes, because smokers, particularly cigarette smokers, are contributing. I believe the numbers he came up with was 13 times more than they cost the healthcare system. They're contributing 13 times more into revenue.
And there's like research.
He had all the numbers. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're the smokers are not only paying for their own burden on society, but they're paying for a large
13 times more
of costs. But a lot of that money goes into consolidated revenue, not just into the health budget. I think from memory, when we had David Leyonhjelm on the show last
been on
year,
your show.
Yeah.
He was on our show. I believe, and I could be wrong on this, but it was like $30 billion a year in
Something
tobacco
like
tax is going into the
Extraordinary. And we're still in debt. Madness.
yeah.
So this is another good one from Daniel Turner. My cigar feels blocked, struggling to get smoke out of it. Any ideas? That can happen. Inconsistencies. I'd be interested to know what the cigar is, Daniel, particularly if it's a Cuban. They are notorious for that. The best thing to do is to have a cigar tool, and I don't have mine handy, but there are
Here it is.
Here we go.
So what happens is you open it up by unscrewing it. This has actually been designed by a dental surgeon in America that actually likes to smoke cigars. And as you can see, there's little barbs on the end of it. And the idea is that you drill down the center of your cigar like this. I don't need to do it, but I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. You go about as deep as the drill bit, and then you give it a twist. And as you twist and pull it out, and see how it just pulled out a little bit of tobacco, then you go in a bit deeper and a bit deeper and a bit deeper, and you do that until you basically clear the blockage. Usually what causes that is every cigar is, these type of cigars are handmade, and there's always going to be inconsistencies. And it's just, some of the leaves didn't fold properly. They might have twisted slightly as they were rolling the cigar, and that twist is like when you put a kink in a garden hose and it restricts the water. Same thing happens with tobacco leaves. You twist the leaves, it blocks it, and it means that you can't actually get air drawing through it. But that tool allows you to drill down and get that blockage removed.
Yeah. Let me just grab this one. So Sam, I think, is replying to someone else who's asking about the arrest. Yes, Sam's basically spot on. I have a court date, 19th of January. I have 2 charges of incitement, 2 charges of breaking the public health orders, and the bail conditions were very reasonable. Hence, I was happy to sign them and come straight back out again. And thank you once again to Monica Schmidt for standing up to the unreasonable bail conditions that she was slapped with, and thus meaning that I didn't have to do that. I think they learnt their lesson, and they were pretty reasonable with their bail conditions.
I did see.
I'm just so happy that they were so civil with you. Like, from everything that we've seen and heard over the last 12 months or so,
18 months?
It's just nice that they actually had their senses. And I mean, I don't know how many of your viewers watched the Discernible episode. Was it last week? I think it was
with Crystal Mitchell.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And it was really, really good to hear that self principle. Will it stand up to scrutiny? Is it ethical? Is it lawful? And is it fair?
Yeah.
And it really makes me wonder. The officers that you were dealing with today were obviously applying that self principle with the way they were dealing with you. Yeah. And I think that's actually, they really need to be commended for doing that. But, there's so many others that have just obviously forgotten their fundamental training that they were drilled in when they were, recruits.
Yeah, 100%. They were lovely today. And honestly, when all of this is over, I would quite happily try and catch up with them socially and actually get to know them, because both of them were lovely. The sergeant in particular was the one I interacted with the most. Lovely, really lovely human beings. So, and like I said, that's been my personal experience in my personal interactions with police officers, is that as human beings, my experience has been that they've almost all been lovely.
And I think they went out of their way today to be very courteous and respectful as well. They were very respectful. They recognized that we have young children, and so they were very respectful in the way that they carried out their job.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, like, just to give you an idea of the lengths they did go to. I had 2 missed calls on my phone. I saw them and I didn't answer them because I don't answer block numbers. And so I got one, ignored it, got another one straight away, ignored it. And that was them from the car outside trying to give me a call just to ask me to step out the front so they could tell me what was going on, let me know what was happening, so they didn't have to come and knock on the door and have the kids answer the door and whatever else.
Which we're trying to train out of Winston.
Yeah. Look, it's hard because, anytime there's a knock on the door, we don't know who it is and we don't know why they're here. And so I have to grab the phone and be ready to go live just in case it's the police. I don't want to be the one answering the door because I don't want to be right there and not be live and blah, blah, blah. And we don't want Winston answering the door because we don't know what the attitude, if it is the police, we don't know what the attitude of the police is going to be. And so, I've got a 5-year-old who wants to run up to the door and answer it and see who's there.
He loves people.
Yeah, he loves people and he doesn't see enough of people. And so it's been kind of tricky trying not to train my 5-year-old that the police are a bad thing, but at the same time being like, no, you're not allowed to answer the door. Why not? well, it's tricky. And I'm trying to make sure that we don't create unnecessary bad blood. Obviously, there's a lot of good reason for bad blood right now, given what's going on. But we have to find a way back from that. When this is done, we have to find a way back from that. And I think building bridges and at least acknowledging those that are making an effort, I think, is important.
And there's no reason to add to it.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, Edwina, how did the kids respond after Topher went with the police? Were there any problems, any concerns, any upsets from that?
Winston is 5, and he loves people, and obviously he loves his dad, and Topher is the main one that actually looks after the kids at a day-to-day basis. That's how our family works. Topher is a stay-at-home dad, and yes, that is very progressive.
How progressive we are!
We are progressive. That's what the lawyer told me, because I was like, "Who's going to cook our dinner now?" And he was pretty good about it. He really wanted to stand at the door and watch to see what was happening, and to really just sort of see what's going on, where is daddy going, and to really just being able to say, he's just going out, he'll be back later, I don't know when, but that's fine. How about, you go watch some cartoons? And he did that for a while. He's certainly trying to process what's going on. We are very much trying to make it a case of, yes, the police are good, and they arrest criminals. And so we're Christian as well, so him wrestling with this idea of somebody that perhaps hasn't done the wrong thing can still go and be arrested. And how does that then affect him, and can that person still have Jesus in their heart if they're in jail? Yes, they can.
Kids do ask weird questions.
But he's starting to be more observant. When all of this started, he was a lot younger. He was, whatever it was.
3.
He was 3.
Yeah.
But more recently, in the last 6 months, I'd say, he's really started to understand, okay, there is a lockdown, there are police, there are rules. Are we going too far from our house? Are we allowed to do this? Are we not allowed to do that?
And we've tried to keep him away from as much of that as possible.
Yeah.
But you'll be in a supermarket and people will be talking, or things come on the radio when you're out in public, and all that sort of stuff. And there's only so long you can sort of keep them away from that.
Yeah. And recognizing for him and trying to explain to him, yes, there are some police that are bad, but the majority are good, and that's okay. And, if there is an emergency, you can call 000, and that's okay. Trying to find that balance has been tricky. He's very intelligent, as you can probably imagine. And so not sugarcoating things, but actually just helping him process what's going on and doing it in a way that a child understands.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. I think we've been lucky that we have a family member that's a police officer as well. So whenever he sees something, if he's flicking through TV channels and he does see something that's quite negative, we have the ability to be able to do a FaceTime with a family member and be like, hey, remember, there are good police officers. Here's an example of one, those sorts of things. So he did really well. And I was able to distract him with watching an entire person play the entire Mario game, one of the Mario games.
He's recently gotten into YouTube videos of people playing like the classic games that were around when I was a kid. And so I'm not even mad. I'm kind of like, you want to, over the next couple of days, you want to watch this 4-hour video of someone playing it all the way through? I'm okay, that can be your entertainment in the morning. Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with that because it's just the nostalgia of the music and the sounds, and it's always kind of fun. So Kerry's saying, I heard that you got it done for incitement. Is there any truth to the rumor? Yes, I was arrested. It was not dramatic. They didn't put me in handcuffs or anything. They did everything that I think they could do without losing their jobs. Now, whether that's enough is a discussion for another time. But I think they did everything they could do without losing their jobs to make it as undramatic as possible.
And it was incitement.
2 counts of incitement, 2 counts of breaching the chief health officer's orders. Court date set for January.
Was Winston awake when you got home?
Yeah. No, we had dinner together.
That's good too. So he got to see a very quick and civil resolve of the matter as well from his perspective.
From his perspective, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad I'm back here tonight. So he goes to bed in a normal house with all of the all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So look, it was always going to happen. I knew that when I right through the journey, I've always known that this day was going to come. There was a part of me, I've been joking about it, but there's been a fraction of truth to it that I've almost been offended. I've been kind of wondering, like, seriously, guys, you're arresting all these other people, and you haven't.
You felt left out.
Am I nothing to you? Am I like? Are you not entertained? Kind of idea. But there's actually a sense of relief as well that that's done. Yes, I'm going to have to change my behavior in ways that I would rather not. But I am going to do that for the sake of the documentary because that's my priority now. That's the most important thing that I can do is to finish the documentary and make it amazing. And just for the sake of not being thrown in prison because of some stupid bail breach and then being away from my kids for months because of a bail breach. Like that's not fighting for human rights at that point. It's
being a dumbass.
Yeah, it's a bail breach. You know, there's no need for that. So yeah, I am unfortunately and resentfully going to have to toe the line. But
doesn't mean everybody has to.
Well, I can't say that.
Oh, but I can.
So it is what it is. I knew it was coming. For those that don't know, I mean, I literally said to Edwina before when we first started going out and it was starting to get a bit serious and I started to think maybe I wanted to marry this girl. I said, listen, one of the things you need to know about me is that I don't back down from a fight, not a physical fight. I'm not good at those at all, but from a conflict, from a
Have you ever been in a punch?
No, I've been in a few. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I got assaulted a couple of years after you knew me. I got assaulted in a car park in a shopping center.
Huh.
Yeah, just random drugged out dude didn't like the look of me. Anyway, where was I? Thanks for the distraction.
You don't back down from a fight?
Yeah. So in terms of the bigger scheme of things, when what's at stake is at stake, I'm not just going to turn a blind eye and keep walking. That's not who I am. So I said to Edwina, and this is now going back a solid 8-9 years, I said, one of the things you need to know about me is that I genuinely expect to go to prison someday. And I didn't say that flippantly. Those of you that follow my work, you know that I'm not an idiot. I'm not running around trying to get arrested. I'm not getting in people's faces and doing stupid stuff. But even back then, I could see the direction the country was going in, and I could see who I am and knowing who I am. Eventually, that was going to lead to me being in conflict with the government. That was kind of inevitable. It was obvious to me 10 years ago. So none of it came as a surprise. We had a plan in place. We had a plan in place for if they tried to slap me with bail conditions that were absurd and I had to stay in for a month, 2 months, who knows how long. We had all that planned out and ready to go. And it's just,
and I'd say
is what it is.
We've had a plan in place for a while. It isn't new because it was pretty obvious January last year, February last year, where all this was going to end up.
Yeah.
It's just sad that it did.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said to the cops in the car on the way back, I said, I just want my city back. what's the Ronald Reagan line? I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democratic Party left me. I didn't leave Melbourne. Melbourne left me. And became something completely unrecognizable. And I just want, my focus now, besides the documentary is front and center. And then to actually try and figure out, how do we come back from this? How do we repair the damage that's been done? And what can I do to contribute to that in some small way? That's kind of the next priority after the doco for me. Because we have to get on with life. At some point, we're going to have to actually build some bridges and find some forgiveness. And that's not easy at the moment.
Yeah.
Someone,
and it's also something that's going to take time. It's repairing something always takes longer than destroying it.
Correct.
And you look at how much time has gone by and how much damage has been done in that time. The repair process is going to take much longer than that.
Yeah.
Well, that's my opinion anyway, for what it's worth, because I've never seen in multiple things repairs ever being as quick as how quick you can destroy something.
Yep, that's how it is, unfortunately. So
you were going to say, Omar?
Well, people were talking about.
Stop monopolizing the conversation, for crying out loud. We can't shut you up.
I think it has to be about quality, Topher. You should know this. The point is that a lot of people talk about cops being good or bad. I think the challenge with this stupid conversation, sorry, not stupid, but its conversation is that cops are not cops. Police is an institution. When it's an institution, you don't judge individually on their own merit, right? You represent an institute, right? Well, people can argue it's a business, but you represent an institute. When it's an institute, it was originally a service to the community, police service, not police force. That only changed only last few years.
Yeah.
So the actual holistic approach, the view, what they do has changed, fundamentally changed. Now, when you have a police force, that is a bad start. That's not meant to be a service, right? Now, there are good people and there are bad people in the police force. We know that. And you're never going to find a bunch of people, an institution where you have all good people or all bad people. Sometimes it happens.
I'm going to disagree with you on one key point here that I think is important, and is something I'm going to be talking a lot more about going forward. I already had it. I was planning to start to talk about it more, and I will definitely be doing that now. And that is, just because you are part of an institution, you're a part of the police force, doesn't absolve you of your moral responsibility for what you do. Each of us as human beings, we remain morally accountable for the choices we make and for what we do. And that remains true even if you're following orders. So yes, I agree that good people who find themselves in a situation where they work for the police and they're being told to enforce all this stuff, that's a really difficult spot to be in. But they cannot simply turn around and use the Nuremberg defense. I was just following orders. It's a cop-out.
Sure. And I would say that actually, if you go to the Victorian IBAC website, they actually have a really great explainer video on the oversight that they have for, just corruption within the police force. And they actually have a really animated video that clearly explains what it is that the Victorian police force should be doing. As silly as that sounds, it's a good little video.
Yeah,
this is a great. Sorry,
I agree with that. But the point was, I completely agree with that. Like, individuals have responsibilities, and they somewhat make the organization. But the point that I'm making is slightly different, and I would stress that again, that we're talking about the actual core of the organization used to be a police service, not a police force. And now you can't compare apple to apples, right? You can have a bunch of good people and you put them in a system that is designed to oppress to some extent. It is never good news. I have one of my closest friends is a police officer, and I look up to him. He's younger than me. I look up to him, and he's an amazing human being. But the system that he's being put into is not somewhat good. So his ability to be a good person is somewhat restricted. And that's a challenge.
And that also comes down to policies and procedures that are used within an institution. And,
correct.
And certainly the police force is meant to be a service. And the way that they then respond within any organization, it doesn't matter what type of organization it is, it's guided by the policies and procedures of that organization. That's my view.
And look, I don't know what the oath is that the police officers take when they're sworn in to service, but one would like to think that there is something in their oath that they're to uphold the peace as part of their duties. And look, I can't comment if that is true or not, but one would.
I had a concerning interaction with a relatively new cop a little while ago, where I challenged them and I said, your job is a job of service to the people of Victoria. And their reply to me was very telling. They said, no, I work for the government. Now, they had only recently graduated from the academy at that point in time. And I have to assume that was the view that they came out of academy with. That somehow this entire concept of serving the people of Victoria has been lost in the training as it exists today. I do believe that it was a part of their training, but to me, it doesn't seem to be there in anywhere near the same degree as it has been in the past. And that's a really concerning comment for two reasons. Number one, because it's an inversion of power. The entire point of our system is that the people are actually in charge, right? The government's not in charge. Secondly, the government of the day, the politicians that happen to have the big chair, is a completely separate thing to the public service, right? And that separation is incredibly important. Yes, the politicians pass the laws and then the police enforce those laws, but the politicians, the government of the day, doesn't get to tell operationally the VicPol what to do. And yet that's exactly what's happening now. The government is telling VicPol, stop that protest, allow that protest kind of stuff. Or at least that's what I'm being told by people on the inside of the police. They are taking instruction at a operational level from the government of the day. And that's a line that was never supposed to be crossed. The politicians make the laws, the police then enforce those laws, ideally without fear or favor, without politics being involved in the enforcement of those laws. But they've been politicized because they're now allowing themselves to take their orders from the government of the day. And that to me is going to be the thing that is going to be hardest to fix and hardest to rebuild trust. Because VicPol are now seen, correctly in my personal opinion, and a retired Chief Police Commissioner Kel Glare, I think his name is, said the same thing on Discernible, that yes, the police have now been politicized. They're now actually operating at a political level. And Crystal Mitchell, the police officer, the acting senior sergeant that recently resigned and is speaking out, has said the same thing. They've been politicized. That's going to be the hardest thing to undo.
And I guess where my mind jumps in that conversation is that if there isn't that segregation between the police and the government, and that the police are actually seeing the government as their bosses, then my concern is that politicians are also bound to obey the laws. And are the police holding the politicians accountable to obeying the laws to the same degree that they're holding the people to obeying the laws?
Yeah. This comment from Dion. The brown shirts who put my Opar in a cattle car were only doing their job during World War II. Exactly. There comes a point, like by default, our attitude should be, we obey the law. That should be our default position. But for all of us, there has to come a point where we go, no, the law is now the problem. And my concern is that there are not enough police officers that have that. They don't even necessarily have their moral antenna up. They're just doing their jobs. They're just following the instructions they're given. And they're not even asking themselves whether it's right or not.
Yeah.
I have a different question. Do you want the rest of this cigar? Because it's not so good anymore. I want to move on to this other one.
No, really?
What? Why not?
So, Damo, I'm going to have to put in an order for some more cigars.
Go for it.
Try this one.
That one there is one of the most mind-altering cigars on the basis that for its size, it produces smoke like a big cigar.
More. It produces the most smoke of any cigar I've
had. There is a very crude general rule of thumb that the darker a cigar, the more intense and bold the flavors generally are that come from it. But that cigar is one that turns that on its head. It's actually quite a smooth, mellow cigar despite how dark a wrapper it's got.
Yeah, for sure. It's not very big. It's not very big, and it's a, I don't know, dome
let me
color.
show this. It's actually what's called a closed foot. I'll try and get some light on that. The tobacco actually is wrapped over the end of the foot of the cigar. It's not open. And so when you light it, you actually get quite a lot of the flavors of the wrap, because a lot of what you're lighting is actually the wrapper. This isn't the easiest cigar to light, so we'll see how you go. You're going to cut that end, light that end, and we will all watch and critique every single move she makes.
Well, let's also point out.
I never criticize somebody who is learning the art of cigars. It's always there to help and let them experience and learn.
Yeah, you should listen to Damo.
So I know in America they, and I don't know if this is in every state, but they elect their chief of police. Do you think
is it the chief of police or is it the sheriff? Is it the sheriff that you're thinking of? The sheriff is elected, but that's different to the police.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the chief of police I'm not very familiar with the process.
Yeah.
But do you think that something in a similar context would work within the Australian framework?
I think that there is certainly something to be said for it. The other example I would give is that actually in many states, no, not so close, babe, a little bit more distance between the flame and the cigar, just warm it up slowly. You've got to light a cigar as slowly as possible. Otherwise, your first couple of puffs are just going to taste awful. The slower you light it, the better.
Except for Omar.
Direct election of judges is one of those things that Australians are often horrified by. No, you can't just elect a judge. You can't just have an ordinary person suddenly become a judge because they won an election. Okay, I get it. They have to have a certain amount of nous. They have to understand how the system works. There's all of those aspects to it. So there would be training required. But the way that we do it here in Australia, unfortunately, means that judges are tending to come out of the lawyer class, which are already often out of touch with the rest of the population. I mean, there's a reason why juries are made up of ordinary people. It's because they can relate to the person who's on trial. And they're more likely to actually connect with that person and give a fair judgment than someone who's been in an ivory tower for too long. My concern is that our judges are at risk of, and I'm not going to say they all are, but they're at risk of being in an ivory tower and not really actually being in touch with the expectations, the community expectations of the common man. And direct election is a way of potentially fixing that. Direct election for sheriffs, for police, etc., a little bit more complicated. I mean, the role of a police officer is actually a complicated role. And in a way, I mean, if politics is functioning correctly, we do elect the person that ends up as the police minister. All right. And we do have direct election over that person. But then the actual police officers, they're not political. They've come up separate to politics. And this is why we need to keep that separation in place. So I'm not sure that direct election of a chief of police or something like that is necessarily a good idea. I think the separation of police completely away from politics is what's needed.
I think you raise a really good point with the election of judges too, because, you know, the judges are the people who are going to decide court cases when us, the citizens, have our grievances against the government. And my concern has always been that are the judges truly separated enough from government that they are willing to rule against the government on I wouldn't say on a consistent basis, but, you know, when things are truly there and you know, common sense, the pub test would say that the government is really stepping beyond the mark or is really being unreasonable or unfair or unjust.
Yeah.
You know, are the judges separated enough from the system so that they are willing to vote against, you know, rule against those things and set a fair outcome for everyone?
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing in Australia, in my opinion, and especially in Victoria, is a political class and a bureaucratic class that are completely divorced from the people of Victoria. And finding ways to remake that connection, I think, would be incredibly important. Is election the right way to do that? Is that the right mechanism? I would need to be convinced. You know, we would need to kind of look at how that works. One of the things that I would really recommend people do. We have the Australian Constitution in Australia, obviously. There is an annotated version of that was annotated at the time to explain why they chose the different things that they chose in terms of how our Constitution operates. Reading the Constitution itself is a hard read, and it's hard to necessarily understand the thinking behind why it's been designed the way it's been designed. But the annotated version does a really good job of helping you to understand why these decisions were made. And it is all about the separation of powers. It's all about accountability and separating power so that what's happening in Victoria right now wasn't ever supposed to happen. Now, of course, I'm talking about the federal constitution. States a different matter. But they went to a lot of effort to try and design the system that way. And then in addition to the annotated constitution, there's a number of letters and a number of sort of treaties that were written or I guess opinion articles or whatever you'd call them, by the people that actually worked on the Constitution, explaining their reasoning even further. There were big debates about should we have a Bill of Rights or not in Australia. That was debated at the time, and they ultimately arrived at the decision not to. And all the reasoning, you can disagree with the decision, that's fine, but all the reasoning and all the thinking that went into that is there. It's public. We have access to that. And it's a tremendously insightful thing to read and to start to understand the amount of work that went into the system that we have. And then as you see the system being broken in different ways, you can start to understand the consequences of that a lot better, because you understand why. It's that old thing of don't tear down a fence until you know why it was built, right? We're tearing down a lot of the checks and balances, a lot of the fences that were built into our political system that were supposed to separate powers and keep people accountable. A lot of those fences are being torn down by people who don't even understand why they were put up in the first place.
And I'm glad you raised the point about a Bill of Rights, because a lot of people don't know that parliamentary privilege before the 80s was actually politicians have got parliamentary privilege. They can't be held liable for things that they say in the parliament. And that privilege actually comes from the English Bill of Rights, 1688. Was it 1688 or 1689?
One or the other.
One or the other. And it's actually interesting that there are high court cases where politicians have been dragged before the courts, tried to be held liable for things that were said, and it was actually the English Bill of Rights that protected parliamentary privilege. And there's a few other bits and pieces over the course of Australia's history that the English Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta have been used in court cases and used to defend certain points of law.
Yeah,
and it's the the Victorian Imperial
the Imperial Acts Application Act of 1984, I think it was 1986.
Yep, which was before the Parliamentary Privilege Act was brought in. In its appendix, it actually quotes the English Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta verbatim, the whole thing, as one of the appendices to that piece of legislation. Yeah, and before we actually, because we started off as a group of English colonies, British colonies in Australia, and then we joined a federation, and where we didn't have our own rules and our own laws, we had brought that English rules and laws with us, and so it was just accepted that these things were part of what made our legal system. And it seems that somewhere along the track, and I dare say through deliberate manipulation of the system, we've tried to push and hide those away. And I still have a personal belief that in a roundabout way, we do have a Bill of Rights. It's the English Bill of Rights because it's been used in previous times successfully in court and has protected politicians for many decades.
Yeah. So Helen makes a good point here. New Zealand has a Bill of Rights which isn't being upheld. This is one of the things that's become really crystal clear to me more recently. And I wrote an op-ed on this that I couldn't get published anywhere. Mankind has tried to keep government power in check in lots of different ways over the centuries. We created republics. We created the Westminster democratic system. We've invented bills of rights. We've done all sorts of different things over the centuries to try and protect people against a government with too much power. Every single one of those things is failing before our eyes. All right, the US has a Bill of Rights. New Zealand has a Bill of Rights. It's not working. Right? It's not being honoured. It's not being respected or upheld. We've got Westminster democracies that are well, we are one, okay, and Victoria is one. And we've got every type of government. The French Republic system. It's not really working out that well for them in terms of protecting their rights either. And I came to the realization that there is only one thing that actually protects rights. There is only one thing that actually limits the power of a government, and that is the limit of our obedience to a government. That's the only thing that's ever worked historically. That's the only thing that's ever worked to actually limit the power of a government. And politicians are not known for ever going, oh, you know what? I think we've written enough laws. I think we're done here, right? We've done enough. We've written enough. We're going to stop now. They'll keep going.
Because they have like an entire legislative council that's just sitting there approving laws,
just signing off on stuff. Okay. So if they're not going to stop, then what's going to stop them? Clearly not a Bill of Rights. Clearly not separation of powers in a Westminster democracy. These things aren't effective. We can see that very clearly now. The limit of a government's power is the limit of people's obedience to it. That's the only thing that's worked historically.
Somebody said, how libertarian of you. So that's exactly what he is.
Yeah, but then again, you get two libertarians in a room and ask them to define libertarianism, and you'll get three different definitions.
Useless mob you are.
We are. We're pretty useless. All right. I got to take some time out for 2 minutes. I will be back very shortly.
Can you bring back some water?
I will bring back some water.
Thank you.
Yes.
And while he's gone, I guess Omar can tell us more about you.
Quiet down, Omar. Stop monopolizing the conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make the story short. I currently run a health food store.
You say that again?
I currently run a health food store, an organic health food store.
Yeah.
And I basically also have a small vlog. It's called Wellness Project that I basically post or share things about health and wellness. I got into health since I was 13. I had some life-threatening conditions as a young boy, and there were you can count them. Each one of them was deadly and problematic, and I basically that kind of prompted me to let go of other things that I've done in life, including studying, all the things that kids do, and sort of almost dedicate myself to pursue and discover or find the truth about, health. So that's my journey. I've studied naturopathy, Chinese medicine. I did some clinical work in homeopathy, and I consult people with chronic illnesses and stuff on a daily basis, and help them and help myself as well as that. And that's my story. Simple.
So before you got into health, what was your career path, or what were you doing before you got into health?
Well, interesting you say that. I started helping since I was 13. So obviously you were at school, but academics or reading was my kind of thing since I was a kid. So I basically did a double degree in psychology and history. And after that, I did 4 postgraduate degrees, one in international relations and political science, junior doctorate in American study and politics, and master's of business administration. So, and in commerce and IT as well. So I got 4 postgrad degrees. I mean, that is not primarily to pursue a career itself, but just to something that I
whatever your career was, though, you were clearly doing well, because all of those post studies, that's expensive.
That's very expensive, and I think that basically came from the point my dad was not a highly educated person, and his thing, my MBA, which is my last postgrad, I finished about 2 years ago. I used to, after I finished 3 postgrad degrees, he would still ask me, "Have you done MBA?" I'm like, "Dad, I've spent like 20 something years in academics, and let me go." And for him, MBA was the thing. So I did the final one just to keep him kind of happy. So
he's that generation.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah. So
did you do that study in Australia, or was that overseas?
2 postgrads in Australia. 2 not in Australia. UNSW and Australian Institute of Business. So UNSW is quite a prestigious institute in Australia. So that's where I did that postgrad in Commerce and Information System Management, an MBA from Australian Institute of Management. So
where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the United States in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yep.
So a lot of my education and growing up happened there. Moved to Australia in 1998. So that's like core of my adult life, if you want to call that.
So is that where your accent comes from?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Nice.
That's right.
So when you look at your life in America and look at your life in Australia, and how things work, what sort of insights have you gained in the difference in our culture? Because I mean, there's always this thing that, Australia is this sort of legacy of England, but heavily influenced by America. But having been someone who's been in America and now living in Australia, what's your observations on our 2 cultures?
Well, the cultures are very different, believe it or not. Well, America, Australia, Canada, and Z are technically called colonized states. So the cultural aspect is fundamentally different than any other part of the world because history is only like 200 years. But interestingly, the difference between America and Australia is massive. I'm saying massive. In some ways, it's creepy and there's a lack of civil liberties for some people, and in some instances, it's still land of free in some ways, right? Depending on the state you live in. But the thing that I thought was different when I first moved to Australia in 1998, I thought the core value of human life was a lot higher. It was a bigger of a deal that you call, because I remember in 1998, I walked into the Cross. And I saw like 16-year-old, 17-year-old girls just walking in the most fucked up places by themselves, and that was okay kind of thing. And I freaked out. And I thought that if it was downtown New York or Atlanta or whatever, you wouldn't have a chance. You would not have a chance. I mean, Chicago, you would not stand a chance. If you're a 16-year-old, you're going to go past downtown at night in the middle of the night. You got no chance.
Yeah.
So the kind of pros and cons, different outlooks of life, and depends where you are in the States too, because going from Midwest to Cali, parts of LA is completely different. You are in Atlanta is different. You are, in Dakota is completely different. So the outlook is completely different. But as a whole, I think people still have the ability to eat what they wanted to eat to some extent, live the way they wanted to live. Although in the last 5 years, I think 9/11 was the basic changing point because civil liberties after 9/11 were completely depleted. Homeland Security completely changed the way the civil rights were managed. So I think that put a big dent in American civil liberties. Australia is not much different. I think after a couple of the so-called terrorist issues that happened, the first thing was gone is civil rights that were taken. So I'm afraid it's in some ways Australia is following the path of some of the worst things that happen in America. Well, there's some still good things in America too. Kind of very different. I think one thing I remember, it's very interesting. I was driving with my uncle, going past New England, and we got stopped by a police officer. And my uncle was from the UK, and he was on a holiday, a vacation. He pulled up his license. He says driver's license registration. He pulled up a license, and he looked at the license, and he said, New England, because we were in England. He did not think of a person actually is from England. He thought it was New England, So it's very American focused.
Yeah.
When in the States, regardless of your accent, your color, race, religion, you are an American. I think that one thing happened in America that never happened in Australia. You stop a person down, in our West in Sydney. He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Italy." I said, "I'm not fucking asking where your dad come from. I'm just asking, where you're from in Sydney, for that matter." But the question is obviously perceives where your dad came from, for example. Just very, very different outlook.
Okay.
So I want to just go back.
Sorry.
Can I go back a little bit and ask another question? So you talked a lot about everything that you've accomplished with all of your studies and with the wellness and with the health and the life-threatening issues that you had to deal with from such a young age. How is it then that you've now brought cigars into the mix? Like, I mean, I know that Topher loves cigars, and a big part of that, certainly over the last 18 months, has been, from a mental health perspective, and just being able to stop and sit and think and breathe and reframe what's happening in the world. And cigars has been a great tool for him to be able to come back to, that base level from a mental health perspective. But you're talking about a whole other aspect of wealth. And now I'm kind of wondering how do the cigars then fit in with that, and when that kind of started to come in?
Well, it's it's a kind of very interesting question because I kind of struggled with this habit for the past 4 years. For the first 3 years, I didn't want people to know what I was doing. I had a whole lot of people that have looked up to me, and older moms and dad, and their children. They kind of they go ask Omar, kind of thing. And I decided that I can't hide something that I believe is not a problem, just because of the sake of what people think. So first of all, I'm of the opinion that a cigar smoking habit cannot be related to vapes, shisha, or cigarettes. It's completely different. It's fundamentally different. There is a small correlation, which is a burning of a tobacco leaf, which is part of cigarettes as well. So that's number one. I have yet to see a clinical study that differentiates cigar smokers from cigarette smokers or vape smokers that has a reasonable correlation or some kind of direct causation that says, okay, that substantiate because of that A, B, and C. Now, if you completely disregard all the medicine, all the science, and just look at common sense and not be dogmatic in common sense, because I could say this: I've never taken any drug in my life. I don't drink or, blah 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 blah. I like to say I've kept it pretty clean in my life. If you completely go with common sense, a basic common sense, and you think the human evolution had happened in millennia, right? There's one thing was common, that we inhaled and we have encountered carbon-based smokes. Was it burning of fire, burning of wood, burning a leaf, whatever. And human body has a robust mechanism that detoxification, that detoxify you from the smoke of carbon-based burning, carbon-based smoke. And it's a robust, it's an established pathway, right, that utilizes all the 4 top detoxification pathways we have, such as sweat, such as peeing or passing the stool, lymphatic function, blah blah blah. What we don't have is detoxification from VOCs, which is volatile organic compounds. So human body has never encountered all the heavy metals that get dumped from the cars, jet fumes, and also the chemicals that we use in life, right? So if someone asked me, what do you think about juicing? Is juicing good? I said, no. God never made juices. God only made fruits. Eat the fucking fruit, right? But is juicing any better than McDonald's burger? Yes, it is. It is better than McDonald's burger. So you have to put things in perspective. Whilst if you have okay health and you don't have any mouth ulcers, you don't have any other metabolic problems, I can't see a cigar doing anything bad to you. But I'm not giving a health advice. This is a personal opinion based on common sense. So if you live in a bush where you have never had any volatile organic compounds, right, then maybe excessive cigar smoking is a problematic. But if you live in Sydney, Australia, or Melbourne, well, I don't want to fucking ever live in Melbourne. Sorry. But you know what I mean? If you live in an urban city, which you have, parts per million of heavy metals, you can't compare. You can't compare. Yeah. So I have logically deducted this analysis that I believe that it is absolutely no problem to me. And if you have a healthy lifestyle and you don't drink like 10 bottles of whiskey like Topher does, you should be okay.
Well, and look, just adding to the conversation that you just shared with us, the one thing that I've discovered with cigar smokers is that you can actually get a bunch of guys and ladies that have differing opinions from different perspectives of politics, different perspectives of life. Yep. And when you actually sit down with a cigar and start talking like we're talking now, the cigar sort of takes down our facades, it takes down our brick walls, and it allows for some genuine conversation to take place. I find that if I sit down with someone who I don't necessarily agree with, but we share a cigar together and talk, we're able to get to a point where we can actually step into each other's shoes and understand the other person's perspective. You might not necessarily agree with it, but at least it acts as a bridge to build better understanding between people. And I've got the little statement that I say occasionally on our Friday night show is, I think that if we made all our politicians smoke cigars while they're in Parliament rather than, bitch name calling each other and talking a whole lot of useless crap, we might actually see some sensible politics and some better negotiation and development of better policies and procedures in our Parliament.
And if they had to pay for the cigars themselves, we might see a reduction in tobacco tax.
No, they'd probably just charge it to the bloody taxpayers anyway.
It's government business. So yes, I've had a few questions. Why are we talking about cigars, etc.? And a moment ago, someone made the right call here. Tonight, it's a mix of the Cigar Professor and Topher. So this is the first time I've brought these two worlds together, and that was planned last week. And then obviously I got arrested today, etc. So a whole lot of stuff has happened. But this honestly, and Edwina, you talked a moment ago about cigars being good for my headspace, right? And after the day I've had, I thought about, do I cancel tonight, whatever. And it's like, no, this is how I want to spend my evening after the day that I've had.
I also told Damo that we're not cancelling tonight. So
there you go. Okay. So apparently, even if I wasn't here,
the show was going to go on with or without you.
The show was going to go on. All right. Well, you know what? I'm actually glad to hear that. But this, and look, Damo, maybe we should talk for a moment about why we even started the Cigar Professor, because it was after the start of all the lockdowns. It was.
Before we started the business, which was a direct result of lockdowns. I could probably count on one hand how many cigars I had a year. It was on New Year's Day. Every New Year's Day, I have a big get-together with my staff, and we have a New Year's Day barbecue and party and just unwind, relax, discuss the year that's been, discuss our aspirations for the business ahead. So my primary business is a special effects pyrotechnician. That's my full-time job, but it is a very seasonal job, a bit like picking fruit. There's only certain seasons through the year that I actually get work, and I actually have to make my whole year's income in about 3 to 4 months of the year. And unfortunately, COVID totally destroyed my business. I'm now at 22 months with no work. And I got thrown into being basically the home dad, looking after the kids, because my wife's business was still going ahead because it's online, and she was the breadwinner. And my youngest is a moderate to severe autistic child. And I was struggling to cope because school was the point where my wife and I were able to just have that time away from a child that requires 110% of your attention. When you've got a kid that cannot function by themselves, cannot self-occupy by themselves, doesn't understand danger, doesn't understand good and bad decisions. You're always on edge. You're always just grasping to always keep one step ahead of them and on your toes, and that doesn't facilitate being able to do anything else productive in the day when you've got that a child like that. And it was a point where I was really suffering mentally, and I was starting to go on walks to clear my head. And last year or the year before, time's just such a blur, but basically just before COVID hit, I suffered a back injury and was in excruciating pain, and I couldn't lie down, I couldn't stand up, I couldn't sit, I couldn't get into any form of comfort. And obviously pacing around the house annoying my wife, who's trying to work on the computer, she told me, look, just go away, go for a walk, go smoke a cigar or something. And then so I just took her at her word, and I went for a walk and took a cigar with me. And then not only did the cigar relax me, and I think a lot of my back pain was stress related, but the ability just to gather my thoughts like you just really helped me cope through the stress of that whole situation. So I think that was when I started really talking to you about what was going on in life, and talking with you because you were more experienced at lockdowns than we've been in New South Wales. And I guess I was hoping for, insight and techniques and tricks and one thing and another. And you had countless people that you knew that were, right on the very edge, really suffering serious mental health issues. And I was sending cigars down to you, and you were sending the cigars to friends to just to have a virtual session like we've got tonight to chat and help them cope and work through these issues that are, loss of jobs and loss of family support and loss of normality of life. And cigars became I guess a tool that helped a lot of blokes cope with everything that we've had to go through.
Yeah, and so I remember the conversation. We had a conversation, and I'd thought about something like this, and I know you'd thought about something like this in the past as well, independently. And we got talking about it and just said, if ever there was a time when something like this was needed, it's now. And so we decided we were the world's first. We've been copied twice that we know of already, but we were the world's first to put together cigar packs that our subscribers would receive, and then to actually smoke a cigar every week in a live video like this. And we'll be talking, they're much more focused on the actual cigars themselves. We'll talk about where it comes from, who blended it, what the tobacco is, what the vitola is, tasting notes all the way through from the open to the middle to the end of the cigar, drink pairing notes, all that sort of stuff to help people learn. So it's education as well as a subscription service for the cigars themselves. And our focus was, yes, this is something that we love, and it's something that has been incredibly helpful to all of us. But giving blokes who have had, in some cases, everything taken off them. I mean, some of the people, yeah, I mean, you mentioned there were people that I knew that were getting pushed pretty hard. Like, some of them were pushed pretty fucking hard, and giving them something to look forward to every week. At the end of the week, just to let go of all the stress, enjoy us talking shit, giving each other a hard time, and smoking together and feeling like they're part of a community. And that's why we created it. It's just sort of
and get to see a face that we don't get to see faces anymore. So this was a media that we could actually see each other's faces, and nothing was really out of bounds, so to speak, with discussion and just to know that there are other people going through the same thing and encouraging each other to hold on, don't give up hope, and to come back next week. Let's hear how things go. I remember one of our guys had a new car, and was it a new car and had a crash in it?
So Cos has actually just commented here and said, I personally have received much love from you guys. And Cos, it's been our pleasure, man. It's been great having you and all the others on this journey. Trust me, we get as much from you guys as you guys give, as we give. Like, it's just amazing.
Yeah, and it's just been our heart. We're definitely not doing this for the profit, because the bank account definitely shows that it's not being done for the profit.
And can I say, because you won't talk yourself up, but let me talk you up for a second. The hours that you put in sourcing all of the cigars, the hard work testing the cigars. I know that's a real burden on you, Damo, just having to smoke all those cigars and test them. But no, seriously, the hours that you put in behind the scenes, if you then add that up and look at the amount of money that we've made over the last 10 months, it does not compute. It does not add up.
But it's given me something. Like, before we had this, I was stuck at home with no work, depressed, nothing to do, look after the kids, no escape from the stress of being a parent, and in a way lost, because I spent 20 years of my life getting my training and my skills honed to my little niche, and I'm probably one of only 2 people in the country that has the skill set that I have. The only other person that has similar skills to me works at Fox Studios in Sydney.
Yeah.
No one else has the same list of integrated qualifications. And I was personally requested by many of the big bands. Like, the first time I went on tour with Guns N' Roses, they loved me so much that they basically said, it doesn't matter which company they contract to do the work in Australia when it comes out, they have to make sure they employ me to go on tour with them. So I basically became their guy in Australia. It didn't matter whether they employed this company, that company, or the other. Their demands were, doesn't matter who you go with, you're just going to send us Damien. And I actually went on tour with Kiss and they landed in the country and they caused a ruckus with the promoter, because the promoter for the Kiss tour and the Guns N' Roses was the same guy. And they basically demanded that they rip me off that tour and go on the other one. Otherwise, the tour wasn't going to go smoothly. And, you know, I've toured with Katy Perry. I've toured with Pink, with Limp Bizkit. All these big bands.
Forget all of that. You've done Disney on Ice.
That is one of my favorite.
That's the pinnacle.
It is a bit mind-numbing at times, but it is definitely one of my favorite things, because to do special effects and fireworks on stage and see little kids' eyes light up, and to see that they think that magic has actually occurred in front of their eyes, to actually let them see a cartoon come to fruition in front of them. It's just such a heartwarming experience to just, like, you know, for me, it's just science, it's chemistry. I do it every day, but then you watch the kids' eyes, and then, you know, some special effect happens on stage and their eyes just go, wow. And they're like, mommy, did you see that? Did you see that? And it's just like, that's what I live for. And with the fireworks displays that we do for, you know, we do a lot of community events and not-for-profit events, and just to hear the crowd cheer at the end, that's all I live for. Like, it doesn't matter whether I've made $100 on the job or a few $1,000s on the job. It's whether the crowd cheered at the end, whether I've actually done something that makes people happy. And I think it's that passion that I lost when I lost all my work due to lockdowns. And it's not quite to the same degree, but it's the same thing that I'm seeking out of this business, is that I'm hoping to, you know, bring those experiences, and the guys that, you know, come back and say, wow, I would never have tried that cigar, and that's just become my new favorite. Or, you know, I only ever had this one cigar in my life, and you've come along and opened my eye, and now I found all these other wonderful things that I love in life. Or I'd never thought of pairing this and that together. And you know, and just to see the joy, and particularly in the world that we've got at the moment, that's just something that's just so missing in people's lives, is joy and finding little things in life that make people happy. And I think that's been my driving force. And you know, I've done all of this because I know that we have people tune in, and you know, we have some banter and make comments. And you know, to be honest, I live for the comments. Like, you know, the shows that we get next to no people commenting, I sort of feel a bit flat at the end of the show. But when we've had a show and we've had dozens of comments back and forward, and even people teasing each other, you know, like, you know, the Australian way is to tease your friends and make fun of them. You know, that's how you know that you're true mates. And to see some of that coming out that's been lost for so long in this culture for the last 20 months or so, that's which drives me. That's what I wanted, and I'm glad that we're seeing that happen.
Mate, true. All 100% true. Had a good comment here from DK. Smoking and COVID probably don't go well together. Actually, there's an interesting sidebar there. A lot of research went into the relationship between whether someone was a smoker and how fatal COVID was to them. And they actually found, some studies found no correlation. Other studies actually found that smokers were less likely to die of COVID than non-smokers were. Now, I'm not going to speculate too deeply on why that might be, but trust me, there were a lot of studies done, and they redid a number of studies because they got the opposite result to what they were expecting. And so they redid them to sort of verify what had happened. And there appears to be something, I've no idea what it is, but there is something about the way that your body cleanses itself of the toxins. Omar was talking about it before. I mean, cigars aren't good for you. I know that. I'm very well aware of that. But there's something about whatever activates in your body to deal with the effects of the cigars appears, based on at least a majority of the studies, not all of the studies, but many of the studies, appears to actually help with COVID.
And it was actually France that was one of the first to lead this, because France has actually got a very high percentage of smokers in their population. And they expected to see a high percentage of smokers in the ICU units, because smokers generally have lung disease and lung disorders from all the smoking. And what they actually found was that the smokers were statistically underrepresented in the hospital system compared to the non-smokers. And nobody's been game, I think, to do studying on it, because nobody wants to say that smoking is good or there's a benefit to smoking. But there has been some theories floating about. Now, these are only hypotheses. No one's tested or studied it any further. But nicotine is a poison. Before a lot of the modern day pesticides are used, they actually used to extract nicotine from tobacco to use as pesticides on crops for fruit and vegetables. Yeah. And there is a belief that the low levels of nicotine in the blood actually poison viruses coming into the system, and so they act as a I guess like an insecticide against the virus. And so, but nobody's ever actually, tried to put that to the test. And I don't think any government would dare or university would dare fund such a research project because it's too politically incorrect.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one, and I'm not going to sit here and say that these things are good for you or to take them as a defense against COVID, but my decision has been this. Based on the research that I've read, if you're having no more than a cigar a day, basically, the increased risk of any form of cancer is within the margin of error. So I can't say for sure that there's no increased risk, but the increased risk detected in the studies that were done was within the margin of error in the study itself. So we actually can't say for sure that if you stay below about a cigar a day, we can't say for sure that it's actually bad for you. It probably is, but we actually can't say that for sure based on the data. And for me, the upside of what it does for my headspace and my mental health. I mean, look, doing what I do is great, and I love it, and I love all of the followers, and I love it when you send me messages, etc. But people reach out to me because they feel they've got no one else to reach out to, and they tell me what's going on in their life. And some days that's fine, and I can deal with it easily. Other days that gets hard, and Edwina will know that there are some days I come away from the computer and I'm just like, babe, I'm going outside and taking a cigar with me, Yeah. And an hour later, hour and a half later, I finish that cigar and I come back inside and I feel like a new man. Suddenly I feel like I've got energy. I just start doing housework or playing with the kids or doing whatever needs to be done. But an hour and a half earlier, when I walked out the door, there was no way. There was no way I had energy or headspace for any of that. So for me, if these things kill me, which they might, okay, if that happens, just know that it was worth it, in my view. What I gained from these during my life is worth whatever they cost me at the end of my life. If I'm one of the unlucky ones, so be it. But in my opinion, for me, I think it was worth it.
And one of the things that we don't recognize in society, which I know one of my doctors highly recognizes, is that stress is the silent killing pandemic of this century.
Yeah, 100%.
And we do not truly appreciate how devastating and how detrimental to our health living with stress at the levels that we live at is. And I've got some long-term health issues that I've been battling with for years. And my doctor says there's no way I can prove it, and many other doctors would argue otherwise against me on it. But I truly believe that all of your health issues stem back to stress. And I would tend to agree. As life has got on and got more complicated, and kids and work and mortgages, the amount of stress that I carry.
Wait a minute, Damo. You're not trying to tell me that working with explosives in major public events and stadiums packed with tens of thousands of people is stressful? You're not trying to say that that's stressful, are you?
Well, when I first got into it, the amount of legislation we had to do for a show was next to none. The paperwork used to be about half a page of scribble, if that. But some of the work that I do, I actually did an event many, many years ago for the Liberal Party in Canberra, and I kid you not, there was 200 or 300 pages of paperwork, on-site meetings, the amount of bureaucratic BS that I had to go through for 30 seconds of sparks on stage when the Liberal Party were presented on stage for a photo opportunity. And yeah, like, I love the work, and there's a few times through the year, like, you never go out and do something new and untested on the general public. There's always, you've got to refine your craft in a safe environment away from people. And yeah, that's fun because you get to have a bit of fun and you get to play and no one's around, and it doesn't matter if it works properly. You can, do it again and again and again and have fun. And my crew love that. But when you're actually out on the job, it is actually quite stressful. People say, "Oh, what was that firework? What was that firework?" I do fireworks shows, and I would be lucky to see 5% of the show, because the whole time I'm watching, are all the fireworks on the ground doing what they're doing? Where's the crowd? Has anyone jumped the barricade? Are my crew where they're supposed to be? Or are my crew in danger? Because I'm an employer, I'm responsible for the health and safety of my crew. And the whole time, because, these are dangerous things. These are explosives. That's why they're licensed and regulated. And you're trying to effectively do something that can fundamentally be very dangerous in the safest way you can, and keep everybody safe and happy at the end of the night. And there is a lot of pressure and a lot of stress that comes down to that. And also, the stress of meeting the performance criteria of your client. Is this going to tick their boxes so that they're happy to hand over the paycheck at the end of the night and book you next time round, or are they going to ditch you and you lose the contract?
Yeah.
Well, I saw a question that was a good one earlier. Somebody asked a question of how old were you when you started smoking cigars? Here we go.
I smoked my first cigar when I was in my 20s. It was just a one-off as a celebration. I was part of a stage production that went really well. And then after closing night, we all went out on Lygon Street, and I, on a whim, bought a cigar from a corner shop. Don't buy cigars from corner shops. Please don't do it. It was awful, but I felt it had cost me so much money. I felt that I had to smoke the whole thing, and I did. And I felt really, really bad afterwards. And then it was sometime later that I got reintroduced to cigars that were actually, initially, it was the sweetened cigars. So they were chocolate dipped cigars. And then I got into the wood tipped vanilla cigars. And that would be in my very late 20s. So about 10 years ago for me. And then slowly worked away from the flavored ones towards what I would call real cigars, where you're enjoying the flavors of the tobacco itself. About 10 years ago, around about 30 years of age, thereabouts. Damo?
For me, that was about 5 years ago. So I was 37 when I started, and until I started the business, as I said earlier in the show, that for me, it was just a handful of times per year. And you know what? If we weren't doing the show on Friday nights, I probably wouldn't be having a cigar every week. I'd probably only be having a cigar once every 3 or 4 weeks, to be honest, because for whatever reason, for me personally, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, but for me personally, I don't find I'm addicted to them or craving them. But that's also probably because I have so few, one, maybe 2 a week on average, so.
Yeah. Omar?
Sounds absurd.
How many do you have in a week, Omar? Just can you count?
He hasn't got enough fingers.
Yeah, not enough fingers and toes.
I can't count. But
how many of you had today, Omar? You sent me a photograph earlier today of you hard at work at your shop, sitting in a lounging chair, smoking a cigar. So that's your idea of hard work. How many of you had it one day?
I think the most I probably have is about 10 or 11, maybe 12. 12.
In a day?
In a day?
Yeah.
Do you remember to eat?
While I was having a cigar. Ate while having a cigar.
So Rachel, you definitely do not inhale cigar smoke. It's about the flavor. It's Damo said earlier, it's like wine tasting. It's in your mouth, you enjoy the flavor, and then you expel it out. You don't inhale the cigar smoke. That's a fast track to feeling really, really sick. Olas, have you ever rolled your own cigar? No. But a friend of the show, a friend of the Cigar Professor show, Whiskey Pete, as Damo was talking about him before, he's actually the only non-Cuban, Cuban certified master cigar roller. And he actually has rolled cigars on our show for us before, which is a lot of fun. But no, I've never actually done it myself. Cos, you are absolutely right. Omar is a madman. That many cigars in a day, in a day, yes. Crikes, his lungs are made of iron. Yes, they probably are.
Well, I must admit, Omar is very much like me. We prefer to smoke outdoors. And one of the reasons for that is I personally don't like breathing in the secondhand smoke. Like you can see I'm practically outside. I'm just under cover at the moment, so I don't get any rain on me. But I prefer smoking outdoors. I'm not in it to breathe and inhale the smoke. It's literally wine tasting in the mouth, swish it around, enjoy the flavors, spit it out. And that's my vibe.
Yeah. No, I'm the same, but I do smoke indoors now because I don't know if you've ever been to Melbourne, Damo, but it gets pretty cold in winter.
That's all right. Well, that's what a fire's for. You know what? And that's my absolute favorite thing is to go out on a property, go out bush, have a nice crackling fire on a beautiful starlit night, freezing cold, so you can see your breath, and just detach from society, have a cigar, watch the bonfire, a few good mates talking or not talking, and just reconnect with the world that's not the city life.
One of the funny things about the Cigar Professor shows on Friday nights is when a cigar is really amazing when all three of us just fall silent.
Yeah.
And here we are. We're live streaming across Australia and around the world if someone wants to tune in from overseas. The Cigar Professor is here to teach you and educate you about cigars, and we're just sitting here just not saying a word. That's when you know a cigar's really good.
We'll have to start keeping tabs on our record time of silence on the show.
Yeah. So, guys, my wife lit this cigar.
Oh,
I've done it.
Not your cup of tea?
And then put it down. Now, the question was asked earlier, do you smoke a cigar all in one go, or can you stub it out and then come back to it the next day, etc.? If you leave a cigar overnight having been burned, it is not going to taste good the next day. Yeah. It just isn't. It's not going to taste anything like what it was supposed to taste like. The blenders, the growers and the blenders who make these things put a lot of effort into creating the flavor profile that they're looking for. And that is a crime. And I can't leave that overnight. And so you know what that means?
Well,
it means I have to light it up, and I'm now having a nasty fritas tonight as well.
Well,
nice.
But it turns out that Damo and Omar were right. It is really smoky.
Yes.
And I wasn't a fan of how smoky it was. And I think my cap is one cigar. I started to puff away on it. I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm pushing it. This is too much.
And that's the thing with cigar smoking. There is no right or wrong. It's what you enjoy, and we tell our viewers, especially with a cigar, as it burns down, the tars do burn up, accumulate in what we call the nub, or the end that you put in your mouth, and there gets a point where the flame will hit that build up, and then the flavor changes. And some people will push through thinking they got to smoke the whole cigar, but if you're not enjoying it, you don't smoke it. You just put it down and leave it, and that's just the right thing to do. You don't want to ruin your experience with cigars just for the sake of, rescuing a bit of tobacco.
Yeah.
Or because
but don't let Omar know I said that.
Now I'm with the Damo on that. We are really particular. I was telling the boys when we first started, it took me 3.5, 4 years after purchasing my first cigar to actually have a cigar.
Yeah, right.
Why were you buying them?
I kind of love them from a long time, but I kind of want to read about it. I want to research. I want to know really if it's something that I want to bring into my life. And I'm kind of very slow, as you could probably tell. And it took me whatever years to see, okay, and Damo and I were talking about it. I had one ages ago, and Damo and I started talking, and that's where we actually really got together into it. Mm-hmm. So he's my partner in crime. I appreciate what he brought to my life, and that includes Topher. He brought Topher to my life. So now it's been an amazing journey. You guys were talking about Cigar Professor, and first Damo told me and said Topher and I are going to do that. It's like, dude, this is such an unreal idea in between lockdown and truth be told, that after a whole week when you are actually kind of over the whole entire world and you think it's a dogfight, it's a place that you don't want to be in. We really look forward to 8 p.m., 2,000 hours. We are kind of looking forward to it.
On Friday night. Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Andrew said, love a good cigar. Gave up cigarettes about 10 years ago. Don't mind a cigar every couple of years. Yeah, I've never had a cigarette. Never had one. Doesn't interest me. Cigars are an entirely different thing. Cigars are about the ritual of the cigar.
Cigarettes.
And the time. Sorry?
And the time as well. Like you don't have a cigar in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's you have to be deliberate and set aside that time to sit down and commit to it, and just sort of really don't do anything else. Obviously talking and enjoying company of people is part of that ritual, but it's a way to force you to stop and be still and just stop with the hustle or bustle of life that we're so trapped in.
I would argue that it's a variation on meditation, on yoga, on any of these things where the purpose is to slow you down and to get you to reconnect with, to be present, if I can use the wank word, and a cigar, if you're enjoying a cigar, you should be thinking about the flavors. You should be paying attention to the way that it's burning and make sure that it's burning okay. You notice how it feels in your hand. It brings you very much into the present. And when you do that for an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half, depending on what the cigar is, that is what I think actually works wonders for my own sort of headspace. There is just this ritual to it.
Absolutely.
So Marianne has asked if I can share my arrest story. I did earlier on. So in very, very brief, there's really nothing to share. It was very undramatic. The police were as lovely and nice as they could be whilst choosing to do their job rather than choosing to not do their job. So again, that's a story for another time. But within the boundaries of doing their jobs, they were absolutely as lovely as they could possibly have been. They drove me to the police station. We went through a bunch of paperwork. I gave a no comment interview, and then they put the bail conditions in front of me. The bail conditions were very reasonable and about as reasonable as they could possibly have been without the officers themselves getting into trouble. And so I agreed to sign them and come home to my family. And I do want to mention one other thing, and that is a huge thank you to Monica Schmidt for being brave enough to stand up to the absurd bail conditions that they put on her. Because if she hadn't done that, then I suspect that would probably still be the strategy, and I would have been faced with exactly the same choice that she was faced with. She took the courageous path and said, no, these bail conditions are not reasonable and I'm not signing it. And I think I owe a big thank you to Monica because she contributed to my experience being so much better than what hers was.
Yep.
I definitely like the comment there with the coffee.
Yeah.
Actually, we did a pairing about 5 weeks ago where I actually deliberately had a special coffee roasted and paired just to match one of the cigars that we were smoking on the show. And I went through and showed everybody how to make the coffee so that we could all have the same coffee made the same way. And we could all experience the same thing together. And that's another thing with cigars. One of the things I love.
It was a brilliant coffee.
Yeah. And it's one of the things I love with cigars is, especially when you're having the same cigar with other people, is actually having that mutual experience that you can actually share and experience the same things with other people and have the same enjoyment at the same time. It was just great. So,
yeah. Yeah, so KM, when Aussie Cossack was arrested, my understanding is that I don't know if it was orchestrated or not. I actually haven't had time to go into that. I'm hoping to have a slow chat with Aussie Cossack at some point in time. But yes, someone put the call out for everyone to ring the police station, and from what I'm hearing, the phones absolutely rang off the hook for the police station. People wanted to know what was going on with him, whether he was still there, whether they were treating him properly. I don't know if the same thing happened with me or not. I've no idea. No.
It did happen on his page.
Yeah.
On Aussie
Everyone
Cossack
was trying
page.
to work out which station you're at so they could all start ringing.
Look, that warms my heart. Thanks, guys. I do appreciate that. Yeah, look, it's a funny thing, and I have the advantage of having been expecting something like this to happen for 10 years. So it didn't come as a shock. We were prepared. My wonderful wife, Edwina, was an absolute rock and played her part and did the things that we'd figured out to do perfectly while I was away. And thankfully, the end result is I'm back home with my family, and that's about as good a result as you can hope for under the circumstances.
I'm gonna have to get you one of those face masks, with the big cigar sticking out the picture of the cigar sticking outside.
Yes,
so you can walk around with that.
Yeah, 100%. G, thank you very much. G says that they called.
Oh, I think I spoke to G.
Okay, nice. They also hid the Google reviews of that police station. Well, there you go. I'm finding out new stuff. It's funny. I feel like I'm more out of the loop than everyone else is because I was on the inside with no information.
Yeah.
So I don't know what was going on.
And I'm not even sure that I've caught up with it all because certainly my phone blew up. It was just calls and text messages, emails, Facebook messages.
Yeah.
It went nuts.
Yeah.
But I think certainly a lot of support, which was great.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate it. So
really
Joel
nice.
is asking, do I think Omar would make a good guest on Here for the Truth? Omar would make a fantastic guest on Here for the Truth. And as much as I give Omar a really hard time because he just monopolizes the conversation and makes it all about him, and it's tiresome, Omar, stop it. The truth is, if you actually dig deeper into Omar, the guy's a freaking legend.
Oh, well, while you were out, we did actually ask him for a bit of a rundown on him.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm mostly amazed at how much he has spent on education.
Yeah, no,
That's
listen,
insane.
Omar has forgotten more than I know, right? And if you want him on your podcast, I highly recommend it. But brace yourself because he's going to go deep. He knows his stuff and he's going to need more than an hour. Okay. I think the Here for the Truth podcast is normally an hour long. You're going to need more than an hour to spend with him, man.
The truth is Omar's more connected than any politician.
Yeah, that's probably true. So Topher, what was the action that was said to be incitement? So I've got 2 charges of incitement and they're both in relation to Facebook posts that I've made along the way.
I'm sure you can't tell us which ones, can you?
No, I don't believe there's any prohibition on that.
Oh.
But I'm not going to go to my Facebook page and pull them up now. But it was in relation to protests that were happening and what I said prior to the protests and during the protests that has been deemed to be incitement. So, yeah.
It's a pity they didn't have a typo and say it was insightful.
That would be nice, wouldn't it? That would be nice. Yeah, look, it's a crazy time that we're living in when exercising basic human rights has suddenly been turned into an indictable offense. We're going to come out of this and it's going to be like a bad dream. We're going to look back on this and it's going to be like a bad dream. And there's a lot of people that are doing things that they think are right now. That when it's over, when you're at a party and you're having lots of fun and you do something really, really stupid, but at the time it seemed like a great idea. And then in the morning, you're like, oh, what did I do? Not that that's ever happened to me. Just to be clear, of course, I've never been that guy, right? But
I normally feel like waking up in hospital.
Sorry?
I thought you normally wake up in hospital when you have those regrets at parties. How did I get here? What happened?
I think that's going to be the experience for a lot of people. That's going to be the experience for a lot of police officers, that when this is kind of over, they're going to look at what happened and they're just going to be like, hang on, what did I do? What was I just a part of? What just happened then? So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of that going on. Any news on court hearings? Yes, I've got a court date set for the 19th of January. So my focus is to try and get the documentary done. The documentary is meant to be done before Christmas anyway. That's the deadline that I've set for myself. But I definitely need it to be done and published before my court hearing, just in case they decide to lock me up for whatever reason. I need to make sure that that no one is, or that the documentary is not depending on me at that point in time, and that the family is as ready as possible for whatever the outcome of that particular day is.
Topher, can you give us a little bit of breakdown, if possible, on your doco, like what you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Steve,
right.
And what you want to get from that?
Yeah. So this is the poster for it.
Yep.
It is Battleground Melbourne, and it's all about the fall of the world's most livable city from the perspective of the people that risked everything to try and save it. So it is really about Daniel Andrews. He's the focus of this. We have 3 key focuses, 3 key sub-themes within the documentary. The first one is Daniel Andrews and the way that he has gathered power and the way that he is. I talked before about breaking down the fences, the guards that were meant to be in place to separate powers and to keep people accountable. The way that he's broken those down, everything from reducing the amount of funding that IBAC gets, and so many other things. The fact that right now he's excluding elected parliamentarians from Parliament so they can't do their job. The fact that Parliament has spent so long suspended and unable to do its job that he's ruling by decree with a small number of people with concentrated powers under the public health orders and through the state of emergency. So talking all about how that even happens, because a lot of people assumed that this couldn't happen in a free country like ours. But here we are. So we need to tell that story of how that happened. So that's number one. Number two is talking about the media and how the media have been complicit, how they have twisted everything. The media, interestingly enough, the Victorian government, to my understanding, is the biggest spender on advertising in Victoria. They have, I don't have up-to-date figures, but 10 years ago when I looked at the figures for a different project that I was working on back then, the Victorian state government was spending $300 million a year advertising to the Victorian people, right? They take our taxes and then they advertise to us to tell us what a great job they're doing. I don't know what the current figures are. I'm trying to get that data. And what that means is that even the independent media, the commercial media, well, they're commercial. They want money. Who's giving them the most money? It's the government. So how independent are they really? Add to that the fact that in 2020, the federal government handed back to the commercial channels their licensing fees. About $40 million a year is what they pay, $41 million a year in licensing fees. And they gave this rebate back to them. Yeah. Maybe that's not intended to be a bribe, but it sure looks like a bribe. And so looking at what the media have done, how they've been complicit, how they have manipulated and twisted the truth, how they've repeated without any question the talking points of politicians. A politician says something in a press conference and it just gets repeated like it's truth. No, there's no critical analysis from the media. And contrasting that with the independent media, the guys like Rukshan, the guys like Avi, some of these other streamers that have all they've done is simply shown the world the reality of what was happening on the ground. And the contrast between those two is absolutely astonishing. So covering the complicity of the media in all of this. And then the third one, of course, is the pushback, the protests, the violence, the police, all of that aspect of what's happened. And that's what's grabbed news headlines around the world. But you've got to understand that's a symptom. That wasn't the problem. Those protests occurred because of a different problem. The problem was Daniel Andrews. The problem was the concentration of power and the way that he was running the state. And the protests were a symptom of that, and the escalating police violence were a symptom of that. So that will be a very important part of the documentary, but it's not that the documentary is all about that, right? That's not actually the story here. The story here is what caused those protests and what brought about that escalation in violence. So that's what the documentary is all about, those three sort of key points. And since you brought me back to the doco, I'm just going to put in the fundraising link one more time. A lot of people have been asking, how can they help to fund my legal defense? I'm very grateful for the offer, but actually it's more important to me that we get this doco done. I'm able to do a really good job, that I have the resources to be able to pay a really professional team of competent, experienced film industry professionals to edit, to do the motion graphics, to do the audio grade, the color grade, music, everything else, to make this an absolute top-notch feature-length documentary that tells the world what happened here. That's more important to me than what happens with my court case. So instead of support for the court case, if I can ask you, I'm just going to put in the link here, www.givesendgo.com/battleground Melbourne. Let me make sure I spelled that correctly. Yeah. All right. So that should pop up in the chat on all the different platforms, YouTube, Facebook, etc. And if you are in a position to, please don't if you're not in a position to, but if you're in a position to support that, I would be very, very grateful to make that happen. So my focus now is just getting that documentary done and delivered and out in the public, ideally before Christmas, if everything goes well. If we have a few delays, it may push out into January sometime, but it has to be out before my court hearing on the 19th of January.
I think one of the things that people forget is that ultimately Topher is a commentator and a filmmaker, and that's what he does. All of this other stuff,
absolutely.
At the end of the day, that's what he does, and that's what he's done for the last 12 years.
Yeah, and I've produced more corporate type videos, TV commercials, and directed them, written and directed short films and that have won awards and that sort of stuff. This is my wheelhouse. This is what I do, or what I used to do. No, it's not in here anymore. Yeah. I used to have an award up on the shelf there, but I moved it into my new set that I'm building at the moment in another room in the house. So, yeah, so 65,000 is what I need as a minimum budget. That's really skeleton budget. I don't know how that strikes you. That might sound like a lot of money, but trust me, in the world of documentary making, it's a real shoestring budget. Ideally, at a commercial level, this is about a $210,000 to $230,000 project. That would allow me to hire an army of people, good editors, good motion graphics people, good color graders. They're charging you $800+ a day, $800 to $1,200 a day to use their skills.
The other thing to also point out is, I mean, being able to get that full budget means that he's then able to employ people to do that currently at the moment, not many of them have work. They don't have work. Many of them don't qualify for a lot of the government subsidies that are around either. So they are sitting at home wondering, what are they going to do? How are they going to feed their families? And they're doing other things that aren't what they're trained to do and what they love to do.
So that's the focus. And if we can hit that $200,000 budget mark, what that means is not only is the documentary itself going to be better, but we'll actually have a marketing budget. So it's not just a case of putting it up online and hoping for the best. We're actually going to be able to promote it, to push it, to potentially, we can spend the money to get it into the portfolio of projects that people are then taking to people like Netflix, people like Amazon, etc., to try and get it added on as one of the documentaries that they have on their platform. We're going to target SBS Vice, because they do at least have a history of being willing to put up stuff that's pretty controversial. So they might be willing to look at this. But if we don't have any budget to pay for the right people who have the right connections to then take it and put it forward, that's just not an option. So at the $65,000 budget level, I know I can do a good job, not an amazing job, but I can do a good job. I can tell the story and we can put it online and hope for the best. As we increase above that level, that's where things start to get really interesting. And we potentially can make this documentary literally just go right around the world and have the entire world know what's happened here.
Yeah, unless you worked in the industry too. I mean, I've worked on productions, stage for television and theatre, and there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. That you go and see something and you go, wow, look at that was great, and it was an hour worth of entertainment or documentary, but the months and in professional circles, the years that go into making those productions come to fruition, and the countless number of hands that go to do that. Like Disney on Ice, there's about 200 people that pull that show off, even though you only see about 20 or 30 skaters on the ice throughout the course of the show. It's 200 people it takes to pull something like that off.
Together.
It's a massive number of people behind the scenes of productions that are required to do things like that.
So anyway, that's where I'm at. So those that came because you were worried about what had happened to me, good news is I am back home and spending time with my family, spending time with my friends, and enjoying as the closest thing to normal life that we can actually enjoy right now.
Which is great.
It is. It's nice. This, honestly, this was a pure fluke of timing. I, of course, had no idea that the police were coming today, but I can't think of a way that I would have enjoyed my evening more than by spending it with you guys and with you.
So not the arrested part? That wasn't like the fun part of the day?
No. Like, if that was going to happen,
just checking.
This is exactly how I would have...
It made the cigar all the much sweeter for you.
Yeah. That is true.
Very good. Well, since we talked cigars, Omar, what did you think?
Of the cigar?
Yeah.
Look, not one of my top favorites, but something that I would smoke again for sure.
Okay.
I think it's a cigar that you wanted to have with black coffee.
Yep.
Or maybe perhaps a any sort of long black or something like a dark coffee, and I think it will complement it very well. Had a very deep vegetative herbal notes in it, bit of cedar. It was nice.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one. For me, it was it's filed away in the reserve. I think I'd have it again, but with everything that's out there, I'm not sure if it'd be my first grab with everything else that I know I've got. So
Room 101 always have some good cigars.
And look, that's the interesting thing too, and just to educate some of our viewers tonight, every cigar brand will have their absolute crackers that are just, they're the winners. They're the ones that get them awards. They're the ones that are the bulk of their sales. And then they'll have other ones that generally the masses don't necessarily like. But with everything in life, whether it be coffee, whether it be chocolate, whether it be, fine dining, different people have different tastes. And that's what these companies are doing. They're making a diversity so that there's at least something in their portfolio for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, speaking of chocolate, this is one of Damo's masterpieces. So you can buy this. Damo, plug this, okay? Can you type in the link for people to find it? This is 100% dark chocolate. It is the greatest companion you can have to a cigar. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Or an espresso coffee. It is absolute killer with an espresso coffee. I call it the espresso of chocolate. I'm on a ketogenic diet and been on that for many, many years, which means I basically try to eliminate all carbohydrates out of my diet, which includes sugar. And I love chocolate. And so when I gave up sugar, I was devastated because I couldn't have chocolate. And there's sugar-free ones that taste terrible. And being a coffee drinker, I drink black coffee. I like espresso. So anyway, I wanted to come up with 100% chocolate, and there's literally only one ingredient in that chocolate. It's the only chocolate that I'm aware of that's made with one ingredient, and that's just whole cacao beans that I select. I roast myself. I take it all the way from bean to bar, all handmade by me. It is a boutique product, and it takes me 3 to 4 days to make a batch of chocolate. And because I've only got a very small commercial kitchen and a small setup, I can only make a few kilos at a time. It's a treat. If you're someone who loves chocolate and you're someone who loves drinking espresso coffee, it's the marriage of espresso and chocolate in the one thing. So I'm actually in the process. I've spent the last 3 days manufacturing the next batch as we talk, and tomorrow I'll be tempering and casting all the bars tomorrow.
Well, it does say on here gluten-free, dairy-free, GMO-free, soy-free, no refined sugars, free from animal products.
It's the only vegan product in the world that I actually consume.
I'm sure you ate a carrot.
Fine. I eat fruit from time to time and vegetables as well. Look, gentlemen, this has been a pleasure. And what a great way for me to unwind after what turned out to be an eventful day. So I'm very, very grateful to you. I'm grateful to everyone that's watched, everyone that's commented. But I'm knackered. I'm just drained. So I'm going to enjoy what's left of this cigar, have a chat with my beautiful wife off air, and turn in for the night and get some sleep. But guys, you guys are legends. You guys are legends. I so appreciate you in my life. And moments like this, I really appreciate you guys.
If you want to hear more of us, you can tune in on Friday.
Yeah, Friday night, Cigar Professor Facebook page. Or if you're not on Facebook, you can send us an email. We're on YouTube as well, Cigar Professor on YouTube. And if you want to email us.
The Cigar Professor?
Probably. But if you search for Cigar Professor, I'm sure you'll find us. And admin at cigarprofessor.com.au. We did confirm that earlier, .au on the end. So, guys, I'm going to sign off, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will see the two of you on Friday, and all going well, I'll be doing a slow chat tomorrow with a very interesting guest who hasn't 100% confirmed yet. So I can't tell you yet who that is, but all going well, I'm going to have a really, really interesting guest for you tomorrow night as my Thursday night slow chat.
I look forward to it.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chuck.